Hey guys, before we begin, lock your doors, look around, and make sure you're safe. If you enjoy stories like this, hit like, tap, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. Now, let's begin. Before we begin, remember that truth can be stranger than fiction. The year was 2019. Late February. A man named Lee Eugene approached the Dong'an police station in Anyang City, his voice tight with worry. He'd lost contact with his parents, his 62-year-old father, and his 58-year-old mother. He needed help finding them. The police, however, showed little concern. Cases of two elderly people vanishing simultaneously were in their experience extremely rare. They suggested a trip, some undisclosed business. Wait at home, they advised. 2 weeks stretched into an agonizing wait. On March 16th, still with no news, Eugene returned to the station. This time the response was swift. 2 days later, March 18th, a horrifying discovery was made at the Hyundai apartment complex. In a wall cabinet, they found the badly decomposed body of Sunja, Eugene's mother. That same afternoon, a call came from rural Pangta. An overwhelming stench, villagers reported. They'd found an elderly man's body inside a refrigerator. DNA tests confirmed it was Lee Doku, Eugene's father. The discoveries pushed Eugene to the brink, but what followed shocked him even more. The forensic report. Dioku and Sunja had been brutally murdered. So many wounds, the report stated, that the exact cause of death was impossible to determine. This wasn't just murder. It was prolonged torture. The deaths, the report concluded, had occurred on February 25th, just 1 day before Eugene's initial report. A bitter truth emerged. Had the police taken his first report seriously, crucial evidence might have been collected. Even if they couldn't have saved the victims, more could have been done. The investigators, however, seemed unconcerned by this oversight. To them, this appeared to be a typical revenge killing. The investigation team split. One group searched the areas around the crime scenes for witnesses, the other examined the victims' relationships. Near the warehouse where Dioku's body was found, several villagers reported possibly seeing the perpetrator. On the evening of February 25th, the day of the deaths, they said there was a foul odor near the warehouse. Curious, some villagers investigated. They saw a strange man burning a bag. He fled when they approached. Looking back, they realized this man might have been the murderer. He wasn't tall, somewhat overweight, and judging by his running speed, not very athletic, unlikely to be a local farmer. This description was passed to the team investigating the victims' relationships. A puzzling detail emerged. No one family neighbors recalled anyone matching that description. The Lee couple, everyone insisted, lived very private lives and were well liked. No one could imagine them involved in a bloody revenge killing. But Eugene, the victim's son, had a different perspective. The burned bag, he suggested, indicated robbery. On the morning of February 25th, he'd sold his Bugatti Veyron and given his parents 500 million won, roughly $400,000 in cash in a bag for safekeeping. Hours later, they were murdered. A stranger was caught, burning a suspicious bag. Could this be coincidence? The police investigated the couple's apartment. There was no trace of the 500 million won or the bag. Bank accounts showed no unusual transactions. All signs pointed to a premeditated robbery. Information about Eugene selling his car was known to very few people, suggesting the perpetrator was someone familiar with the family. Yet another strange detail caught the investigators' attention. Why was Mr. Dioku's body preserved in a refrigerator in a rural warehouse, while Mrs. Sunja's body was left to decompose in the apartment? This wasn't simply a robbery, they realized. Perhaps the killer acted alone and couldn't transport both bodies. Maybe their vehicle was too small. Or maybe they intended to move both, but something unexpected happened. The Korean investigators, however, proposed a bolder theory. leaving Sunja's body to decompose wasn't random. It was intentional revenge. The killer seemed to harbor a deeper hatred for Sunja than for Dioku. All clues pointed to a familiar person with a personal vendetta against Sunja. Then an investigator noticed a major contradiction. Eugene was extremely wealthy, he pointed out. Why sell the car? Eugene's casual reply, I have many nice cars. Selling a Bugatti Veyron was simply getting rid of excess. Something didn't add up. If Eugene was so wealthy, why were his parents living in such an ordinary apartment? In previous cases, wealthy people living discreetly usually hid something. Was this family concealing an unspeakable secret? The investigator checked the Lee family's background. The findings were startling. The Lee couple didn't just have Eugene as their only child. There was an older brother, Hyun. The mention of this name made the scattered pieces of the case begin to fall into place. The fact that Hyun's parents became victims of a massacre to the investigators seemed almost unsurprising. But why? The story behind Hyun's name began in October 2008. South Korea was in the throes of an economic crisis, pushing many citizens into financial hardship. Many turned to the stock market hoping to improve their lives. Hyun emerged as a rising star, quickly accumulating glamorous titles, the Warren Buffett of Korea, Cheongdam's #1 stock trader, Korea's most experienced investment master. His reputation soared in Seoul's financial circles. By 2014, Hyun's name was known beyond investment circles. He was a familiar face on major media outlets from the Korean Economic Channel to various television stations. He cultivated the perfect image, young, talented, dazzlingly wealthy. He claimed to have graduated from the English Literature department of a prestigious private university in Seoul. During his college years, he said his exceptional tutoring skills earned him about 5 million won, roughly $4,000 monthly. But after graduation, his sharp financial mind led him straight into investing. In less than 10 years, he achieved a dramatic class jump. He bought a mansion in Seoul's wealthy Gangnam district with cash. He owned luxury vehicles, Bugattis, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys. But this wasn't what truly captivated the public. What made Hyun notable was his apparent dedication to helping ordinary people. He freely shared his investment expertise, regularly appearing on television shows, even managing finances for devoted followers. Imagine a renowned, wealthy, successful person offering to manage your finances. Wouldn't you jump at the opportunity? Word spread. Many wanted Hyun's help. Faced with this rising wave of investment interest, he reluctantly opened an investment consulting company. For more cautious investors who preferred to trade themselves, Hyun generously shared lists of guaranteed profitable stocks. The Lee family quickly turned this opportunity into gold. Eugene, his younger brother, established a peer-to-peer lending company to help those who wanted to invest but lacked funds. In a short period, the brothers accumulated a massive fortune, over 20 billion won, about $16 million. But behind the glamour of a stock market mogul lay a dark truth, one no one expected. All investors who trusted him gradually fell into complete bankruptcy. When some victims began investigating, they discovered a shocking truth: his entire background was fabricated. Not a single detail of his past was real. He claimed to have graduated from a prestigious university, but he'd never even attended college. His social media posts flaunting his wealth were fabricated. He claimed he was about to become the distributor for Lamborghini and Bugatti in South Korea. Upon verification, due to South Korea's small market size, Lamborghini had never considered establishing a new distributor there. Even more outrageous, in the summer of 2016, Hyun posted on Facebook, claiming he'd just landed at an airport in China and was preparing to have dinner with a high-ranking official from Jiangsu province. At the time, almost no one questioned this, only feeling impressed by Hyun's connections. It wasn't until he was caught and imprisoned for fraud and illegal trading that this story resurfaced online. Chinese authorities were forced to deny the claims, stating that Jiangsu had no such official as Heon had mentioned. Moreover, the Chinese airport photo he posted was simply downloaded from the internet. The entire post was a fabrication. Unfortunately, the investors he deceived collapsed with him. Thousands lost their entire investments. Many were left with enormous debts. Some victims, unable to cope, tragically ended their lives in despair. One could imagine that had Heon not been imprisoned, he might have been killed by his victims. It wasn't surprising, therefore, that some people unable to take revenge on him directly might turn their anger toward his parents. But if this was the case, solving the crime would be extremely difficult. Heon had deceived so many people. Just as the police were struggling with this dilemma, the officer who had earlier discovered the contradiction proposed an idea. Eugene had been concealing his brother's identity, hiding their past. Now that this veil had been lifted, there was no need for secrecy. The officer's intuition proved correct. When investigators frankly confronted Eugene with the truth, he revealed more information. Like a dam breaking, he disclosed that after Heon went to prison, although they'd returned some illegal funds, the family still retained significant cash and assets. This was why they had to live discreetly, avoiding attention. He hadn't initially thought his parents' deaths were related to his brother's crimes. He was simply trying to justify why he hadn't disclosed everything earlier. Then Eugene mentioned something strange. On February 25th, the night of the murders, he'd received a message from his mother on a messaging app. She said she'd just met a successful Harvard graduate businessman named Kim Young-ho and wanted Eugene to arrange a meeting to discuss potential business cooperation. Eugene added Young-ho as a contact, intending to chat online first, then meet in person if there was potential. Unexpectedly, during their conversation, Eugene accidentally clicked the video call button. The other party connected. He caught a glimpse of Young-ho's round, full face. This seemed normal, but then a chilling thought occurred to him. Hadn't forensics determined that both victims were murdered on the evening of February 25th? How could Sunja have sent messages to Eugene at this point? There were only two possibilities: either forensics had incorrectly determined the time of death, or the person messaging Eugene was the killer. If it was the latter, this self-proclaimed Kim Young-ho could very well be the murderer. The attempt to meet Eugene might have been intended to kill him too, with revenge against the family as the motive. The police immediately created a sketch based on Eugene's description and showed it to the villagers who had seen the suspect. Everyone agreed that the person in the sketch looked quite similar to the mysterious man who had burned the bag near the warehouse on the night of the murders. With the suspect's appearance and build now identified, police used this information to check surveillance cameras around the crime scene. They quickly spotted the suspect in street camera footage. Analyzing the surveillance video carefully, investigators discovered a crucial detail. The suspect didn't act alone, but had 3 accomplices. However, due to poor image quality, police could only identify and arrest one, the mastermind Kim Dae-yoon, the person who had impersonated Kim Young-ho. Contrary to the investigators' expectations of a hardened criminal, Dae-yoon proved quite forthcoming. Immediately after his arrest, he admitted to all his crimes and willingly revealed his motives. But the story he told was even more shocking than his crimes. As the police had suspected, Dae-yoon was one of Heon's countless victims. Unlike most who were deceived, however, he wasn't an ordinary victim. Dae-yoon came from a privileged background, holding both bachelor's and master's degrees from the United States. Afterward, he successfully established a yacht rental company there and thrived for many years. Until August 2017, when tragedy struck. His business failed, his marriage fell apart, forcing him to return to South Korea. After returning home, Dae-yoon planned to use his remaining assets to rebuild his career, continuing the yacht rental business in the Jiang'an area. Unexpectedly, he happened to meet Heon. Since Dion was looking for investors at the time, Heon, with his wealth and influence, became someone he wanted to impress. As a result, he not only participated in Heon's financial projects, but even gave Heon's father 20 million won, about $16,000, as spending money. Finally, with Heon's collapse, Dion, who had returned from America hoping to rebuild his life, was also scammed into complete bankruptcy. But since Heon was already sentenced to prison, Dion couldn't take revenge on him directly and decided to target his family instead. Due to Dion's poor physical condition, to ensure safety, he claimed to have hired 3 young Korean Chinese men online. Dion stated that these 3 men were the ones who actually killed the elderly Lee couple, while he only handled planning and crime scene cleanup. Immediately after the murders, the 3 accomplices allegedly flew back to Jilin Province, China. Although this temporarily prevented South Korean police from arresting all suspects, it didn't affect their determination of Dion as the primary perpetrator. Logically, the next step would be the standard trial process. But what investigators didn't expect was that when detailed information about the murders of the elderly Lee couple was reported by the media, it sparked major controversy. Instead of condemning Dion's brutal actions, the South Korean public unanimously voiced support and called for the court to reduce his punishment. This strange reaction led many to question, no matter how despicable Heon was, his parents were innocent. So how could the Korean public be so blind? The truth behind this reaction was even more shocking. Heon's financial empire was actually a family business, where each member played a role in the fraud scheme. His parents weren't merely innocent bystanders, but actively participated in management. Soon-ja, the supposedly innocent mother, regularly appeared on her son's paid channel, using her image as a respectable mother to persuade and lure people into investing in the stocks their family promoted. After the scheme was exposed, Soon-ja was also convicted but only received a suspended sentence and a fine of 50 million won, about $4,000. Simply put, the elderly couple were accomplices to their son's crimes. Even when faced with public criticism online, the couple not only didn't apologize, but coldly declared that no one in all of South Korea studied stocks as seriously as their son, implying that convicting Heon of fraud was unjust. Now you understand why public opinion sided with Dion, don't you? Just when the case seemed to be reaching its conclusion, an unexpected twist emerged. The 3 Korean Chinese accomplices, after returning to China, suddenly posted shocking accusations about Dion. If Heon was a financial fraudster, Dion was even more vicious. He deceived people to take lives. Dion's previous statements about being only the mastermind, while the other 3 were the direct perpetrators, suddenly collapsed. These 3 individuals revealed the frightening truth behind the murders. Everything began about a month before the tragedy, when Daeun posted a job listing for security guards online. The 3 young men were attracted by promises of an easy job, with attractive pay applied, and were quickly hired. But when they completed all procedures and made the long journey to South Korea, Daeun's first request wasn't normal security work. It was the horrifying task of transporting 2 elderly corpses to a remote warehouse in the countryside. Fortunately, these 3 young men weren't foolish. When they discovered they were transporting corpses, they immediately refused Daeun's request and fled back to their country. In other words, the 3 supposed accomplices were actually laborers whom Daeun had lured from China to South Korea, and they were completely innocent in the massacre. All crimes were committed by him alone. However, South Korean police couldn't hastily believe these accusations. While requesting China's cooperation in extraditing the 3 men, they thoroughly investigated the group's movements during their time in South Korea. What they discovered supported the 3 men's testimonies. None of them had received any money from Daeun. In fact, one of them had to borrow 200,000 won, about $160, from local friends, just to buy a plane ticket home. This detail completely contradicted Deun's claim about hiring them to commit murder. But this discovery led to a bigger question. If Kim Deun had lied about these three men's roles, was his entire previous confession reliable? Were there other secrets behind the case waiting to be revealed? Following this line of investigation, sure enough, even the revenge killing story was a lie. Deun had committed this crime for different reasons. For over a year prior, he'd posed as a private detective to approach victims of Hyun's fraud, particularly those who had gone to his house to demand compensation, indirectly gathering information about the current personnel structure and financial situation of Hyun's family. He even stalked the parents, installing tracking devices and wiretaps in their car. Moreover, as mentioned earlier, on the morning of the murders, Eugene had given his parents 500 million won from selling the car, and this money eventually disappeared. Some might think that taking the money while seeking revenge was convenient. Why waste it? The issue was the timing. It was too precise. Could this really be coincidental? Later, police discovered a crucial detail. Eugene's Bugatti Veyron had actually sold for 1.5 billion, won about $1.2 million. He'd given his parents 500 million won, keeping 1 billion won, about $800,000, for himself. His parents knew about this. If his parents knew, then Deun could have known through his wiretapping. That's why after the murders, he immediately tried to meet Eugene. The purpose was likely to steal the remaining 1 billion won while coordinating to meet Eugene in person. Deun was also in contact with a broker to prepare for an escape to the Philippines at any moment. Putting everything together, police concluded that Deun was the sole perpetrator of this crime, and his true motive was robbery. Consequently, the Supreme Court indicted Kim Deun on multiple charges, including robbery, murder, corpse disposal, and illegal trespassing. He was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment in the first trial. Although he appealed in 2021, the Supreme Court rejected his appeal and upheld the original sentence. Notably, by this time, Hyun, who had been convicted of fraud, had been released after serving his prison term. Logically, several years in prison and his parents' horrific deaths should have taught Hyun a lesson, leading him to reform his life. Unexpectedly, after laying low for a while, Hyun resurfaced and began using Bitcoin to commit fraud. After his crimes were discovered, he was arrested again in September 2023. However, this time he was quickly released on bail. Perhaps the most bitter aspect of this story is that after his release from prison, Lee Hyun seemed unaffected by his dark past and his parents' deaths. Using his remaining wealth, he married a female idol, built a family, and enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle. This case isn't just a tragedy about greed and revenge. It's also a warning about how people can lose their humanity for money. Some commit fraud without remorse, others readily kill for robbery, leaving permanent scars on society. The morning of July 12, 1994. Xiao Dafu, a construction worker from Jianu village in Yongxing Town, Du City, Sichuan Province, China, went to work as usual. He returned home alone that evening to find his wife, Xia Shuo-chin, and their two sons missing. Initially, Dafu assumed his wife had taken the children to visit her parents. The next day, however, his neighbor Mrs. Ma shared some strange news. Mrs. Ma explained that Shuo-chin had borrowed a pair of white plastic sandals from her the previous morning, saying she planned to go to the market. The children, not wanting to stay home, had insisted on accompanying their mother. Hearing this, Dafu instinctively thought his wife must have taken the children to stay at her parents' house after shopping. He quickly ate breakfast and cycled to his in-laws' home by noon. Despite asking everywhere and checking with relatives and friends, Dafu couldn't find any trace of his family. A sense of foreboding began to grow. Worried, Dafu went to the town market to inquire. The locals there said they hadn't seen Shuo-chin or the two boys anywhere. At this point, a Jianu villager named Gao Yuanku provided crucial information. Gao said that on the day Shua Qin disappeared, she had also gone to the town market. On her way home, she had encountered Dafu's two sons, Xiao Yongyong and Xiao Yongquan. The brothers were sitting on a bench by the road. Gao recognized them and invited them to return to Jianu village together. But the older brother Yongyong said they were waiting for their mother to return, so Gao left and went back to the village. Following Gao's description, Dafu and some relatives went to the market to find the spot where the two brothers had stopped. Although they didn't discover anything unusual, some nearby households raised their suspicions. According to village rumors, these families had members previously involved in child abductions. Therefore, Dafu and others suspected that Shua Qin and the children might have been kidnapped. After receiving Xiao Dafu's report, local police investigated these households. The most suspicious among them was a man named Pu Jijian, commonly known as Pu San by locals. Unfortunately, when police searched Pu's entire house, they found no related evidence or traces. This investigation result deeply disappointed Dafu. He still couldn't understand why his wife and children had suddenly vanished without evidence of kidnapping. Local police could only investigate the case as a voluntary disappearance. However, since people leaving their homes was quite common in rural Du, at that time, the local police station couldn't allocate sufficient resources to search for Shua Qin and the children. Since his family's disappearance, Dafu lost all focus on work. Cycling around searching for them became his primary concern. Each morning in his worried and disappointed state, Xiao Dafu even suspected his in-laws might be hiding his family. However, Xia Xin's family was equally worried. According to Shua Qin's sister, their family had also searched many times. Shua Qin's sister dreamed of Shua Qin's return even in her sleep. After more than 2 months of searching, Dafu fell into complete despair. He spent his days drinking to dull the pain, but the heartache wouldn't subside. Devastated by the sudden loss of her grandchildren, Dafu's mother fell ill and passed away 6 months later. Dafu's father was equally heartbroken, visiting places where his grandchildren used to play daily, hoping to find traces of them. Unfortunately, he fell from a small bridge one day, suffering severe internal injuries that ultimately led to his death. A once peaceful family was suddenly shattered by an unexpected tragedy. As time passed, Dafu gradually accepted that he might never find his wife and children. In his family genealogy book, he made 2 notations about the disappearances for his eldest son, Yongyong 1994, taken by mother and disappeared. For his younger son, Yongquan 1994, taken by mother and disappeared. One morning, after 18 years, Dafu unexpectedly received a call from the local police station. The police informed him they might have found his eldest son. Dafu felt both confused and emotional. On September 8, 2012, while working as a laborer in Guangdong province, Dafu's phone was constantly ringing with calls from relatives. After receiving news about his son, the usually frugal Dafu immediately bought a plane ticket and returned to his hometown in Sichuan. At the Yingtown police station in Qizhong County, Sichuan province, Dafu met a young man named Shuang. Dafu and his family were convinced that Shuang was Dafu's biological son, as his face strongly resembled Dafu, while his chin was identical to his mother Shua Qin's. Finally, DNA test results confirmed their suspicions. The young man named Shuang was indeed Yongyong Dafu's son, who had been missing for 18 years. However, according to records, Yongyong was only 7 years old when he disappeared and had few memories of his hometown. How did he find his way back? Where had he been for 18 years? And what had happened to his mother Shua Qin and younger brother Yongwan? According to Yongyong's recollections, that afternoon 18 years ago, he and his brother had followed their mother to the Yingtown market. Then a man from a roadside shop waved to their mother Shua Qin, and she followed him inside. Yongyong and his brother Yongwan sat on a bench outside the shop playing while waiting for their mother to return. Soon after, loud music began playing from inside the shop, making the brothers curious enough to go in. They witnessed their mother being pinned to the ground by a man. Yongyong recalled seeing another man take out a syringe and inject something into their mother's head. At this point, their mother struggled fiercely, but the man holding her down pulled out a sharp knife and stabbed her repeatedly in the back. In the following days, the two brothers were kept in a dark basement under the shop. Although Yongyong tried to escape with his brother through a window, they were caught when they reached the courtyard wall. Yongyong couldn't remember much of what happened next. He only recalled being put on a train. Because the journey was very long, he assumed they had been taken somewhere far away. They eventually arrived in a rural area of Putian City, Fujian province. After a few days, his brother Yongquan was taken away by a man and never returned. Yongyong was soon taken to another man's house named Su Jinchi, who became his adoptive father. To conceal his identity, Jinchi gave Yongyong a new name, Swang. However, as Swang grew older, he discovered Jinchi wasn't his biological father. He couldn't remember his birth father's name, but recalled that his father used to wear a suit and ride a bicycle to work, while his mother was a hard-working and skilled woman who cooked well and worked in the fields. They also raised pigs. Their life was simple but warm. Regarding his real name, Swang said he only remembered his nickname Yongyong. Since becoming aware of his situation, Swang's desire to find his birth parents grew stronger. He kept a precious diary, its most prominent page covered in photos from childhood to adulthood, documenting his deep longing for his family. From 2000 to 2005, Swang specifically preserved these portrait photos, hoping to reunite with his birth parents one day. According to Swang, after graduating from middle school, his adoptive father sent him to apprentice at a gemstone workshop in Guangdong province. Initially, Swang earned only 300 yuan, about $45 per month, not enough for rent, forcing him to survive on 2 yuan 30-cent noodles once a day. He lived in daily suffering, not knowing how many more years it would take to find his birth parents and brother. To find traces of his mother and brother, he drew his childhood memories, including details of his mother's abuse. Though somewhat hazy, the horrific scene remained vivid in his mind. About 3 years later, his adoptive father Jinchi returned to his hometown in Fujian, while Swang stayed alone in Seoul City, Guangdong province, continuing to work. He saved money while secretly traveling to Jiangsu, Hebei, and Hunan provinces, trying to recover memories of his hometown. Although Swang covered his rented room's walls with photos of cities, memories of his hometown remained elusive. During the 2012 Chinese New Year, Swang accompanied a friend to Longchong County, Jiang City, Sichuan province. While dining at his friend's home, 2 dishes suddenly triggered some memories. Swang said the Chinese sausage and watercress reminded him of his childhood hometown flavors. He immediately realized his birth parents might be from Sichuan province. After determining this general direction, Swang registered on the Baby Come Home website. However, his story shocked the website's volunteers, and its authenticity was initially questioned by the online community. When registering, he used the name Xiao Yongyong, vaguely remembering his surname was Xiao or Chow. His name contained Xiao, but he couldn't remember his mother's name anymore. To help the volunteers, Swang drew his hometown, based on scattered memories. In the picture, he depicted dragon boat racing during the festival, his deepest childhood memory. Additionally, Swang drew some scenes from his hometown. According to his memories, his old house was next to his second aunt's house. There was a bamboo forest beside the old house. Behind the house were 2 ponds. As a child, he often fell into them, getting covered in mud. Another vivid memory was a small bridge not far from their house, which he crossed every day to school. Under the bridge was a small stream where he and his brother often caught fish and crabs. Based on these memory clues, volunteers began searching for missing person information across Sichuan. However, 18 years had passed since Swang's kidnapping, and many places in Sichuan had undergone massive changes. It was truly challenging for volunteers to find the exact location based on 18-year-old scenery. To better recall his hometown memories, volunteers took Swang to Sichuan to visit several locations. According to Swang's memory as a child, he often heard his mother mention a place called G Street, which left a deep impression on him. Based on these clues, volunteers found a location near Baotu town in Du City, Sichuan. Along the way, volunteers asked everywhere. They questioned local residents about whether they had heard of a case where a mother and two sons disappeared in the early 1990s. Unfortunately, people there all said they had never heard of such a case. Later, volunteers and Swang visited the Baigal village committee and police station. Although local staff were very helpful, they still couldn't find any family with similar circumstances. After 7 days of continuous searching, Swang and the volunteers had covered all of Du City. Each morning, they set out full of hope, only to return disappointed in the evening. Since the search for relatives showed no progress, Swang dejectedly returned to Putian City, Fujian province. He hoped to get some clues about his kidnapping from his adoptive father, Jinchi. At this moment, a middle-aged woman from Qizhong County, Sichuan province suddenly called the volunteers. This phone call would uncover a secret buried for 18 years. The caller was Xiao Xiying, a resident of Qizhong County and mother of 2 boys. One afternoon in mid-October 1993, her eldest son Wang Xiang mysteriously disappeared after school. Afterward, Xiying and her husband searched everywhere and reported to the police but found no clues. For over a decade, she never gave up searching for her son Xiang. While working away from home, besides regularly following missing person news, she also contacted Baby Come Home website staff and local situation volunteers. In early September 2012, Xiao Xiying saw the article about Swang searching for his family. She thought it might be her son Xiang and called the volunteers. However, after several inquiries, both parties realized that the Swang seeking relatives in the news might be the son of a Xiao family from Yongxing town. Learning this, the volunteers became very excited. They immediately contacted the Yongxing town police station and confirmed that in Zhenko village there indeed was a Xiao family who had lost 3 family members years ago. Then the police went to Dafu's house. At that time, his sister said that after seeing the photo in the newspaper, she immediately believed the young man in the picture could be her brother's long-lost son Yongyang. On September 11, 2012, in Zhenko village, Yongxing town, people gathered at the village entrance to welcome Yongyang home. After nearly 2 hours of waiting, Yongyang finally appeared at the village entrance with the volunteers. Tears flowed freely. Although firecrackers exploded loudly on both sides of the village road, Yongyang's tears wouldn't stop flowing. Facing his aged father and villagers, he was speechless. His tears seemed to say everything. After completing the family reunion ceremony, Dafu led Yongyang into a room and sat down. He took out 2 old photographs that had been carefully preserved for years and showed them to his son. Looking at the childhood photos with his mother and brother, Yongyang couldn't hold back his tears. Although the reunion atmosphere was emotional, Dafu had one question he dared not ask Yongyang. After calming down from the emotional reunion, Dafu finally gathered the courage to ask the question that concerned him most. "Son, how did your mother leave back then?" Yongyang seemed to have anticipated this question, so he took out the drawings he had made and told his father about the horrific scene from 18 years ago. After hearing Yongyang's account, Dafu was silent for a few seconds, then said in a deep, determined voice, "Son, I will definitely find your brother and mother. This is my only wish now." Therefore, that afternoon, Dafu took Yongyang to the Qizhong County Police Bureau to file a report. Based on Yong's account and some materials he provided, the police officers in charge first confirmed the truth about his kidnapping. However, to reconstruct the details of the horrific case from 18 years ago, the police still needed to find more criminal evidence. Since mother Shua Chin and brother Yongwan were still missing and their survival status unknown, the police decided to first investigate Yong's kidnappers to trace the entire case. On September 13, 2012, the Qizhou County Police Bureau sent 2 investigators with Yong to Putian City, Fujian Province. In a village called Hoji in Putian City, Qizhou police found Yong's adoptive father and asked about the kidnappers from that year. However, Jinchi was very cold, saying it had been at least 20 years since he'd seen that kidnapper, and he no longer remembered what he looked like. Faced with Jinchi's resolute non-cooperation, the case officers felt very helpless. As a result, most villagers also spoke ambiguously, clearly unwilling to reveal information about the kidnapper. The 2 investigators had to turn to the local police station, requesting them to dispatch officers to assist in the investigation. According to Yong's recollection, he had stayed in another man's house for some time before his adoptive father took him home, but Yong didn't know where this man lived or his name. He only remembered the man's house had a loft with something like a temple shrine upstairs. At that time, Yong was locked in the loft, and he saw villagers frequently coming to burn incense and worship. To find the kidnapper's specific location, local police called Jinchi in for questioning again. This time, Jinchi clearly showed more cooperation with the investigation. According to his recollection that year, a middleman named A had approached him, saying there was a child about 6 or 7 years old in nearby Gong village, asking if he wanted to adopt. Then Jinchi had followed this middleman to another man's house. Jinchi said he paid a total of 5,800 yuan, about $850, and took Yong away. Unfortunately, this middleman had now developed age-related memory loss and couldn't provide any more related clues. Therefore, police had to take Jinchi to Gong village in Baotou town to point out the kidnapper's residence. According to Jinchi's recollection, the kidnapper was named Wang Zhen, a local from Gong village. Compared to that year, although Gong village had undergone many significant changes after searching house by house, Su Jinchi finally led police to Wang Zhen's house. Over the years, Wang Zhen's house had been rebuilt into a multi-story building, but the small temple shrine upstairs remained almost identical to its arrangement from 18 years ago. However, faced with police questioning, Wang Zhen only admitted to Yong being adopted by Su Jinchi that year. Regarding the kidnapping, he chose to remain silent. To find a breakthrough, the investigating officers decided to first investigate Wang Zhen's social relationships. They quickly made a rather surprising discovery. Through investigation, police learned that Wang Zhen's wife was also from Qizhou County, Sichuan Province, and had also been kidnapped and brought here growing up before marrying Wang Zhen. According to her statement, over 20 years ago, a man nicknamed Pen Nai had kidnapped her. Later, she witnessed other children being brought to Wang Zhen's house multiple times. Through further investigation, police quickly identified the real name of this Pen Nai as Zheng Gixian, 58 years old, from Xinyang Town, the same hometown as Yong. Related documents showed that Zheng Gixian had previously been sentenced to 6 years in prison by the Qizhou County People's Court for child kidnapping. Sentenced with him were 2 other accomplices, one of whom was Pu San, the man Dafu had suspected of kidnapping his wife and children. Based on this connection, Qizhou police believed Zheng and Pu were likely the perpetrators who kidnapped the 2 brothers Yong that year. Therefore, after interrogating Wang Zhen, police quickly arrested Zheng. Simultaneously, they also quickly went to Pu's house. He was now 51 years old. During initial questioning, Pu quickly admitted that the kidnapping of the 2 brothers Yong that year was indeed his doing. However, regarding the whereabouts of Shua Qin Yongyong's mother, he still hadn't confessed the truth. He only revealed the third suspect was Liao Dingyi. To quickly apprehend Liao, police immediately went to his residence for a surprise arrest. However, unexpectedly, the cunning Liao Dingyi had caught wind of the news and fled beforehand. According to Pu's confession, Liao was actually his blood brother. Although adopted into the Liao family from childhood, he had always maintained an unbreakable relationship with the Pu family. Therefore, after searching all the Liao family's connections, police went to Pu's relatives' homes in the neighboring town. Sure enough, they found Liao hiding there. In the interrogation room, Liao honestly told investigators, "I want to ask for the government's leniency. I'm willing to confess all crimes." Then Liao detailed the entire criminal process from 18 years ago. The time went back to early July 1994. Due to financial difficulties, Liao had gone to Pu's house to borrow money. Unexpectedly, Pu once again proposed the kidnapping plan they had contemplated many times before. Pu told Liao that kidnapping a child could earn them several thousand yuan, and this money also sparked Liao's evil intentions. According to Pu's plan, Liao was responsible for observing targets on the street, then luring them to his shop before taking action. However, Liao had observed for several days without finding a suitable target. Therefore, Pu proposed an even more vicious plan. He said that if they saw adults with children, they could kill the adults first, then kidnap the children to sell. On July 12, 1994, Liao saw Shua Qin leading her two sons passing by Pu's house. Therefore, Pu actively stepped out to greet Shua Qin, saying he needed her to deliver a message to someone in Zhenkou village. Without suspicion, Shua Qin followed Pu into the shop. To easily subdue Shua Qin, Liao first turned up a cassette player's volume to maximum to mask any upcoming sounds. Unexpectedly, the cassette player's sound attracted the two brothers Yongyong to run in. In a bedroom behind Pu's shop, Liao first strangled Shua Qin and pinned her to the ground. At this point, Shua Qin struggled violently, so Pu pulled out a knife and stabbed her. After killing Shua Qin, Pu and Liao locked the two brothers Yongyong in the basement. About a week later, Pu contacted the human trafficker Zhang. Through Zhang's arrangement, the two brothers Yongyong were put on a train. They first went to Beijing, then transferred to Putian City, Fujian Province. As for their mother Shua Qin, she had been dismembered by Pu and Liao, and finally buried in a vegetable garden behind Pu's house. Around 10 a.m. on February 28, 2013, police brought suspect Pu to a bicycle repair shop on Bao Street, Yongxing Town. Around them, local residents had gathered in large numbers, hoping to learn the truth about the case as soon as possible. At the vegetable garden behind the shop, many residents had surrounded the body excavation site. Although Pu had confessed to all crimes, police still needed to find victim Shua Qin's remains. According to Pu's confession, that year he and Liao had divided the body into 3 bags for burial. In 2008, he had dug up 2 bags and burned them. The burning location was in a corner of the courtyard. To ensure no criminal evidence was overlooked, technical staff meticulously crumbled each piece of dug-up soil. They carefully washed every fragment suspected to be bone. Besides some chicken and pig bone fragments, police also found some important evidence, including a fragment suspected to be human skull, some ashes from burning plastic bag pieces used to wrap the body, and a rope used to tie the body. However, based on this evidence, technical staff still couldn't prove the victim had been buried in this garden. Their only hope was finding the 3rd unburned bag, but the case had occurred 18 years ago, and Pu couldn't clearly remember where the 3rd bag was buried in the vegetable garden. In this situation, the investigation team had to decide to dig about 3 feet deep across the entire garden. As a result, they quickly unearthed a plastic sandal. This sandal had basically melted with only the sole still showing a bit of white color. By evening, a final black plastic bag was found. Inside was a bag of bones that when assembled formed the lower extremities of a human. DNA testing later confirmed these were Shua Chin's bones from 18 years ago. At this point, the case investigation had results, and Xiao Yongyong had through his efforts brought justice for his mother. However, his brother Xiao Yongwan was still missing. To continue tracing related clues, police decided to return to Putian City, Fujian Province. This time, the human trafficker Zhang led them to the family who had bought Yongquan that year. However, after deeper investigation, police discovered that Yongwan had been sold 3 times. According to Zhang's confession, he had initially sold Yongwan to a local named Safa for 7,500 yuan, approximately $1,100. Later, Safa saw Yongquan constantly crying and felt unsafe. So through another middleman, he sold him at a lower price to a man named Chun, also a middleman, who then sold Yongquan to a man surnamed Wu. Through subsequent investigation, police learned that after Yongquan arrived at the Wu household, he was renamed Wu Qinfa. However, when police brought Yongyong to the Wu household, Wu Qinfa was working in Beijing. After confirming through photographs, police helped Yongyong successfully contact his brother Yongquan. On March 20, 2013, Yongyong finally found his long-lost brother Yongwan and brought him back to their hometown in Sichuan. After 19 years, the case was finally solved, and the 2 lost sons finally returned home to their aging father Da Fu. If the eldest son Yongyong hadn't found his way home, perhaps the truth of this case would have remained buried forever. On August 14, 2014, the Du City Intermediate People's Court issued its initial verdict. Defendant Pu Jijian was sentenced to death for the crimes of intentional homicide and child kidnapping. Defendant Liao Dingji was sentenced to life imprisonment for the same crimes. Additionally, Pu Jijian and Liao Dingji were ordered to compensate the civil plaintiffs 8,970 yuan, approximately $7,500. After sentencing, defendants Pu Jijian and Liao Dingji, dissatisfied with the verdict, immediately appealed in court. On April 20, 2015, the Sichuan Province High People's Court issued its appeal verdict, rejecting Pu Jijian and Liao Dingji's appeals and upholding the original sentence. On November 24, 2014, another defendant, Zhang Gishian, was sentenced by the Qizhong County People's Court to 11 years in prison and fined 10,000 yuan, approximately $1,500, for kidnapping women and children. The illegal proceeds from his criminal activities would continue to be recovered. After successfully finding his family, the elder brother, Xiao Yongyong, chose to return to Seoul City to continue his work at the gemstone workshop to make a living. The elderly father, Xiao Dafu, brought his new wife back to Jiangsu village, where they raised ducks and worked in the fields to maintain their livelihood. The younger brother, Xiao Yongquan, chose to settle in Beijing. Although the family had reunited, they still had to live separately in 3 different places because the beautiful days from 18 years ago could never return. On a fateful afternoon in August 1967, residents of Taipei's Wanhua district witnessed a startling scene. A man drenched in sweat burst into the local police station. His name was Jiang Jinggen, and between labored breaths, he began telling a story that would leave every officer in the station stunned. "Last night I was forced to help bury 2 bodies, Jinjin blurted out, immediately drawing the officers' full attention. As his story unfolded, a horrifying crime came to light. At Chai Art Garden, a mannequin factory located at 51 King Road, the owner Wang Wanan had murdered both his wife and an apprentice. Jingin claimed he had been coerced into helping dispose of the bodies, which were now buried in the factory's basement. Initially, the police were skeptical of this bizarre claim. The idea of real bodies being buried in a factory that made artificial ones seemed like something out of a horror movie. Moreover, King Road was in one of Taipei's busiest commercial districts. Who would dare commit murder and conceal bodies in such a crowded area? What made the officers even more suspicious was Jingen's behavior. For someone claiming to be an accomplice, he seemed unusually eager to confess. The officers also noticed something off about his demeanor. He didn't seem entirely mentally stable. Despite their doubts, the police had to investigate. They brought Jingen to Chai Art Garden, a 4-story building where each floor served a different purpose. A beauty salon on the 2nd floor, residential apartments on the 3rd and 4th floors, and the mannequin factory occupying both, the ground floor and basement. According to neighboring businesses, the factory was highly successful, supplying mannequins to fashion stores throughout Taiwan. They operated almost constantly, rarely closing, even on holidays. That's why it struck everyone as odd when 2 days earlier owner Wanan had suddenly announced the factory would be closed, posting a "Close Today" sign on the door, something completely out of character. When the investigation team arrived, several reporters were already on the scene. After repeatedly knocking with no response, the police were forced to break down the door. As soon as the door gave way, police and reporters flooded into the building. The ground floor featured a display window containing 6 plastic mannequins. Though officers thoroughly searched this level, they found no blood stains or signs of struggle. Finding nothing on the main floor, the group descended to the basement, where Jingen claimed the bodies were buried. The scene that greeted them was unsettling. Dismembered mannequin parts scattered everywhere, arms, legs, heads, and torsos strewn about, while the air was thick with the pungent smell of isopropyl alcohol used in mannequin production. Faced with this eerie tableau, police began to theorize that Jingen might have been affected by the toxic environment. The combination of harsh chemical fumes and the grotesque appearance of the disassembled mannequins could have caused him to hallucinate, mistaking plastic parts for human remains. However, Jingen, his body trembling, insisted on pointing to a specific section of the concrete floor, maintaining that the bodies were buried beneath. Initially, the floor showed no obvious signs of having been disturbed. But while everyone was still puzzling over this, one detective made a crucial discovery in the bathroom: a pile of what appeared to be freshly excavated soil. Additionally, under the display case upstairs, they found cement and fine sand materials that had nothing to do with mannequin production and were typically only found at construction sites. When these discoveries were cross-referenced with Jingen's testimony, investigators began to suspect his story might have merit after all. The police decided to excavate the concrete floor, bringing in 4 more quarry workers with specialized equipment to handle the task. Almost immediately, they found something disturbing. The steel reinforcement bars beneath the concrete had been deliberately cut. Then, at about 8 inches deep, they made a chilling discovery: a fabric glove. The atmosphere at the scene grew increasingly tense as they reached a depth of roughly 20 to 28 inches. The workers encountered something unusual. When they lifted it out, they realized it was human hair. Immediately after, the unmistakable odor of decomposition filled the air, confirming the investigators' worst fears: there were indeed bodies buried under the floor. From this point on, the excavation proceeded with extreme caution to preserve evidence and protect the integrity of any remains for future forensic examination. At 11 p.m., they uncovered the first body, a woman with no visible external injuries. Just 30 minutes later, they found the second body, a male. Unlike the first victim, this body showed clear signs of violence. The face and body were bruised and swollen with distinct strangulation marks on the neck. The bodies had been stacked in the pit, with the female victim placed on top of the male. Fortunately, both victims' faces were intact enough for identification, confirming Jingen's story. The female victim was Su Wanwanan's wife, and the male was Qin Guang, an apprentice at the factory. The medical examiner's report revealed that both victims had died approximately 2 days earlier, with asphyxiation as the cause of death. However, one peculiar detail caught the investigators' attention. Sue Wan's head had been shaved, and the hair they'd found during excavation was confirmed to be hers. This raised an intriguing question. If Jingen's account was true, and Wanan was the killer, why would he shave his wife's head? As police prepared to arrest Wanan, they realized they'd made a critical error in their investigation protocol. Their initial skepticism of Jingen's story had led them to skip securing the suspect before searching the premises. As a result, by the time they confirmed the truth of his claims, Wanan had already fled. Even more shocking were the rumors circulating in the district. Local residents claimed that during the excavation, Wanan himself had been among the onlookers, disguised watching as police unearthed his victims. In the chaos of the crowded crime scene, officers had failed to recognize him. This revelation was a devastating blow to the police department's reputation. Police immediately issued a wide warrant for Wanan's arrest. To understand the motivation behind the murders, investigators began digging into the backgrounds of both the perpetrator and his victims. Wanan, 31, despite lacking formal education, possessed remarkable artistic talent, particularly in mannequin crafting, and had built a solid reputation in the fashion industry. His wife Sue Wan, 1 year his junior, had met him at a billiard hall. They had 3 children together, but their marriage had been marked by frequent arguments and tension. The male victim, Chin Guang, was just 18 years old and had nearly completed his apprenticeship when he was killed. The investigation began with interviews of 3 apprentices who were on leave from Chai Art Garden. While none could explain their employer's motive for murder, they revealed a crucial detail recently. Wanan had discovered 2,000 new Taiwan dollars, about $65, missing, and had a violent argument with his wife. The dispute had escalated beyond verbal abuse. He had physically attacked her and shaved her head 3 days before the murders. On the evening of August 3rd, Wanan had abruptly announced he knew who had taken the money and gave all employees a week's vacation. The apprentices had barely begun their unexpected break when police appeared at their doors. Finding the apprentices' information limited, investigators expanded their inquiry to the victims' families, hoping to uncover any underlying conflicts with Wanan. The first stop was Guang's family. They revealed that before his death, Guang had confided that Wanan suspected him of having an affair with his wife and had beaten him. Despite his parents urging to quit, Guang had insisted on his innocence, believing that suddenly leaving would only intensify his employer's suspicions. Next, investigators approached Wanan's family, hoping to gather more insight. Their conversation with Wang Xinya, Wanan's sister, provided crucial information about the family's troubled past. Xinya disclosed that 4 years earlier, while Wanan was away for military training, his wife Sue Wan had begun an affair with a neighboring pharmacist who had a questionable reputation. What made matters worse was that the pharmacist had convinced Sue Wan to give Wanan a drug that, while not lethal, would render him impotent. During this period, Wanan had noticed severe problems with his sexual function, but couldn't understand why. Despite consulting numerous doctors, he found no solution to his condition. A year later, the pharmacist tried to exploit Sue Wan again. This time he attempted to convince her to work as a hostess at a bar in Kaohsiung, promising good money. Sue Wan firmly refused, ending their relationship. This incident seemed to be a turning point, making her realize the gravity of her actions. She eventually decided to confess everything to her husband. Upon learning the truth, Wanan immediately reported the pharmacist to the police, resulting in appropriate legal consequences for his actions. However, even after justice was served, the betrayal continued to haunt Wanan. Xinya also revealed another significant detail before disappearing. Wanan had borrowed about 5,000 new Taiwan dollars, about $165 from her. She had given him the money without hesitation. With these new pieces of information, investigators began forming a clearer picture of the case. They theorized that Wanan's trauma from his wife's past infidelity had led him to suspect a relationship between her and Guang. This paranoia could have been the primary motivation for both murders. While this theory seemed plausible, it remained speculative. The police's most urgent task was still locating Wanan. Initially, police were confident about capturing him quickly. They had 3 reasons for this optimism. First, Wanan had no known connections to organized crime. Second, he had fled with only 5,000 new Taiwan dollars. And third, Taiwan's island geography made escape particularly challenging. However, another complicated aspect of the case demanded attention: Jingen's role in the murders as both an alleged accomplice and the informant. His motives required careful scrutiny. Why did he choose to confess? Was he truly coerced, or had he been a willing participant in the murders who later turned informant due to some dispute? To resolve these questions, the police split their investigation into 2 teams. One focused on tracking down Wanan, while the other concentrated on interrogating Jingen more thoroughly. During questioning, Jingen provided a detailed account of the fateful night. According to him, around 10 p.m. on August 4th, Wanan had suddenly appeared at his house in a state of distress. Wanan claimed his wife had been missing for 2 days, and that despite reporting it to the police, there had been no leads. He said he planned to search for her in Taichung and asked Jingen to accompany him. Without much thought, Jingen agreed. The 2 men rode a motorcycle to Taipei Station. However, as soon as they entered, Wanan locked the iron gate and revealed the horrifying truth: his wife had done something unforgivable, and he had killed both her and an apprentice. He needed Jingen's help disposing of the bodies. Jingen claimed he panicked and tried to flee, but Wanan threatened him, saying the bodies were under the bed and he wouldn't hesitate to add a third. With no escape route, Jingen said he was forced to help drag the bodies from the bedroom to the basement, placing them in a pre-dug hole. They began filling the hole, a task that lasted until dawn. When daylight broke, Jingen thought his nightmare was over and asked to leave, but Wanan wasn't finished. He forced Jingen to accompany him to buy cement, quick-drying agents, and isopropyl alcohol to refinish the floor and erase all evidence of their crime. While Wanan was busy mixing cement, Jingen seized his chance to escape. Following his survival instincts, he ran straight home and hid in his wardrobe, not daring to make a sound while Wanan searched his house. But fortunately, Wanan failed to find him and eventually left. However, Jingen realized his home wasn't safe. By afternoon, he fled to his brother's house, seeking refuge. Too terrified to explain coherently what had happened, he just frantically urged his brother to call the police. Before his brother could react, Wanan appeared at their doorstep. Jingen was forced to escape through the back door and ran straight to the police station. Although Jingen's testimony seemed credible and was validated by the discovery of the bodies exactly where he indicated, deeper analysis revealed several troubling inconsistencies. The first major discrepancy concerned the physical disparity between the men. Jingen was a blacksmith with a large, robust build and considerable strength. In contrast, Wanan was relatively slight, standing only about 5 foot 3 inches. Given this physical advantage, it seemed implausible that Jingen would be so easily intimidated by Wanan. Another suspicious element was the sequence of events in disposing of the bodies. Digging the hole was arguably the most challenging part, yet Wanan had completed this alone. This raised the question, why would he need help with the relatively easier tasks of moving and burying the bodies? Furthermore, involving an outsider like Jingen seemed counterintuitive, essentially creating an unnecessary witness to his crimes. Confronted with these inconsistencies, police questioned Jingen again. This time, he dramatically changed his story. Jinggan admitted he hadn't been coerced at all. The truth was that Wanan had promised him money, and in a moment of greed he had willingly helped conceal the bodies. However, he claimed that shortly after his conscience got the better of him, prompting his confession to the police. During their deeper investigation, police discovered that Jinggan actually suffered from mental health issues. Years earlier, he had sustained a head injury in a car accident that affected his nervous system. While he could maintain basic daily activity and social interactions, his thought processes and manner of expression were noticeably different from the norm. Furthermore, investigators learned there was a family connection between the two men. Jinggan's brother was Wanan's brother-in-law, and Wanan had even introduced Jinggan to his wife. Considering Jinggan's mental condition and the family ties between them, it made more sense why Wanan might have chosen him for help. However, this also raised a new concern, given Jinggan's mental state. How reliable were his statements? This made finding Wanan even more crucial. He was the key to unraveling the entire case. Police were so confident about catching Wanan that they didn't even offer a reward for his capture. However, as the investigation progressed, things became increasingly complicated. After searching throughout Taipei and expanding their investigation to Taichung, police still couldn't locate Wanan. Just as they were growing frustrated with the lack of progress, a new development made the case even more complex. A man named Yang Gongguan rushed to the police station to report that his wife Lu Wang had disappeared and was likely with Wanan. Yang's family ran a wig-making business and had frequent dealings with Wanan's mannequin factory, which was how the families knew each other. Lu Wang, 30, was a mother of 5, with her youngest still nursing. Gangguan had 2 reasons to suspect his wife's disappearance was connected to Wanan. First, they had disappeared on the same day, and second, neighbors had witnessed Lu Wang getting on Wanan's motorcycle before they rode away. Gangguan feared his wife might have been coerced or even kidnapped. This report opened a new avenue of investigation. When police searched Chai Art Garden again, they discovered intimate photographs of Lu Wang among Wanan's belongings. The photos appeared to have been taken with Lu Wang's consent, suggesting their relationship was more than casual. Further investigation revealed that when Lu Wang left, she had taken her ID and some cash with her. Based on interviews with her children, police concluded she hadn't been kidnapped or coerced, but had willingly fled with Wanan. This discovery made the police's task even more challenging. Now they weren't just looking for a fugitive murderer, but one accompanied by a willing companion. Throughout August, the fugitive couple became Taiwan's most talked about story. The public was eager to see them captured and brought to justice. However, their whereabouts remained a mystery. Rumors placed them everywhere, from southern Taiwan to the central regions, and even in Sanchong. Police had no concrete leads. Initially, investigators thought that by blocking their access to bank accounts and preventing family assistance, the 5,000 new Taiwan dollars Wanan had taken would soon force them out of hiding. Police warnings were published in multiple newspapers, stating that anyone harboring the couple would be charged with aiding and abetting criminals. However, these measures failed to draw them out, leaving law enforcement increasingly frustrated. On August 16th, 10 days after the murders, police intercepted a letter from Wanan to his father. The front of the letter, written in Chinese, appealed for sympathy for his 5 children, and requested his father give Gangguan about 2,000 new Taiwan dollars for living expenses. However, on the back was a message in Japanese saying, "Don't give the money." This was clearly a deception by Wanan, taking advantage of Lu Wang's inability to read Japanese to secretly instruct his father to withhold the money. Rather than delivering the letter, police released its contents to the press through reporters, hoping to create discord between the fugitives. Police investigation had shown that Lu Wang had been home with her children during the murders and wasn't involved in the killings. They hoped that exposing Wanan's deception would convince her that fleeing with him had been a mistake and persuade her to return home. In addition, the police also let Lu Wang's husband Gangguan publish an open letter in the newspaper. Gangguan promised in the newspaper that if Lu Wang returned, everything would be forgiven. Their eldest daughter also wrote a letter herself, saying, "Mom, my sister and brother are both crying. I miss you so much." However, these efforts did not move Lu Wang. Wanan and Lu Wang were still missing. Thus, the police's efforts had not yet yielded any important clues. Many people began to question the police's ability. On August 24th, with no other choice, the police offered a reward of 30,000 new Taiwan dollars, about $750, for anyone who could provide Wanan's location, which could lead to his arrest. However, Lu Wang's neighbors pointed out that the photo of Lu Wang released by the police was an old photo taken after the birth of her fifth child, when she looked chubby, while now she had lost a lot of weight. Such photos were of no help at all in the search. The police then revealed another important feature of Wanan, saying that he had a strange disease and needed to drink herbal tea regularly in the summer. This information caused herbal tea stalls across Taiwan to be packed with people, hoping to find Wanan and receive a reward of 30,000 new Taiwan dollars. Since the reward announcement, the police had received more than 160 tips, but unfortunately, none of them were useful. Just when everyone thought that the case might become a suspended sentence on August 30th, there was a dramatic turn. Wanan suddenly sent a letter to the United Press. In the letter, he described his difficult life as a fugitive and expressed his strong desire to return to his family. He also emphasized in the letter that he did not intentionally kill his wife Su Wan and apprentice Qin Guang. He admitted to assaulting his wife, but claimed that he did not realize that her injuries were serious enough to require emergency treatment, which ultimately led to her death. Wanan also said that if the Lianhe Zhaobao newspaper published his letter, he and Lu Wang would turn themselves in to the Criminal Investigation Department. The next day, the Lianhe Zhaobao newspaper published Wanan's letter. Early in the morning of August 31st that evening, around 11, Wanan and Lu Wang did indeed appear. The two took a taxi to the police station door, held hands, and turned themselves in. From the photos in the newspapers the next day, the two looked clean and tidy, not like they had just run away, especially Lu Wang. She clung tightly to Wanan's side. It turned out that during the time they were on the run, Wanan and Lu Wang had been hiding in a small house near the Nanmen police station in Hsinchu City. Wanan even borrowed a bicycle, wore a conical hat, and sold herbal tea along the road every day. While everyone was waiting at the herbal tea stalls, hoping to catch Wanan and receive the 30,000 new Taiwan dollar reward, they did not expect that Wanan was hiding right in front of them. The two men surrendered, finally making the police breathe a sigh of relief. But the problems of the case were not over yet. When Wanan was questioned, he admitted that he had indeed assaulted his wife, leading to her death due to not being able to receive timely medical treatment, but firmly denied any involvement in Guang's death. On the contrary, he insisted that the person who killed Guang was Jinjin, the person who had initially reported him. Wanan recalled that a week before the incident, on July 24th, he discovered that 2,000 new Taiwan dollars was missing from his pocket. Suspecting that his wife had stolen it, he began searching everywhere and found a bottle of perfume in a drawer. He immediately became angry, thinking that this bottle of perfume was a gift from some lover to his wife, thus confirming that his wife must have had an affair. In a fit of rage, Wanan used rope to tie up his wife, beat her, and interrogated her. Not only that, he also cut Su Wan's hair to prevent her from going out to meet other people. After this violence, Su Wan was seriously injured and had to stay in bed. On July 31st, apprentice Guang brought food to the injured Su Wan. Wanan happened to see the two whispering to each other. He immediately suspected that they had an illicit relationship. Therefore, he immediately tied up Guang, beat him, and interrogated him. So, what did Su Wan and Guang really talk about that day? According to Guang's family's testimony, when they saw Guang injured that day, they asked what happened. He explained that when he brought food to his boss that day, she secretly told him that Wanan suspected him of stealing 2,000 new Taiwan dollars and beat her every day. If this continued, she would be beaten to death, so she asked Guang to help her seek help from outside. Unfortunately, this whispering conversation was caught by Wanan, causing him to be brutally tortured by his boss after hearing it. His family advised him not to go to work anymore, but Guang insisted that he was innocent and decided to go back and explain clearly to Wanan. When he confronted Wanan again in order to prove his innocence, Guang told him that the person who really had an illicit relationship with Su Wan was not him but Wanan's brother-in-law, Jingen's brother. At this time, Jingen was also present at the scene. Hearing this, he flew into a rage and immediately refuted Guang. "You are the one who has a relationship with your sister-in-law, and you still want to blame my brother." In a fit of rage, Jingen beat Guang up. In order to prevent Guang from screaming, he also covered the victim's mouth while punching and kicking. Seeing this, Su Wan quickly spoke up to stop him, making Wanan even angrier and turning to beat his wife. During the fight, Guang stopped breathing, and Su Wan died shortly after. Wanan and Jingen realized that they had both committed the murder, so they went to buy digging tools and cement together and disposed of the body together. Wanan admitted that the whole incident from beginning to end was done by him and Jingen together, and that he had not killed the person alone, and then asked Jingen to help dispose of the body. However, he did not expect that Jingen would report it to the police the next day. Wanan recounted that when he saw the police and reporters rushing into the store, he realized that he could no longer hide it. At this time, he hurriedly ran to his lover Lu Wang, asking if he had killed someone and needed to escape, wondering if she wanted to go with him. Lu Wang agreed without hesitation, took her ID card and some cash, and set off on the run with him. After reading the newspaper reports on the case, Wanan felt that the press had reported it seriously, so he decided to turn himself in. He asserted that the truth was not as described in the press. These statements were completely different from Jingen's. Jingen claimed that he only participated in burying the body, while Wanan said that Jingen killed Guang and then the two of them disposed of the body together. However, Wanan's statement also had many unreasonable points. The forensic report indicated that Guang died from strangulation. If Wanan said that Guang was beaten to death, then how should the traces of strangulation on the body be explained? This contradiction became a key point in the subsequent trial. On October 18, 1967, the case was brought to trial by the Taipei District Court. Although Wanan insisted that Guang's death was an accident, the court did not accept this justification. Therefore, while Wanan's death sentence was almost certain, the main point of contention in the case was whether the whistleblower Jingen actually killed Guang in the first instance. The Taipei District Court held that the deaths of Su Wan and Guang were both caused by Wanan, who suspected the two of having an illicit relationship and had the intention to kill. Jingen was only forced to participate in burying the body, so he was declared innocent and released. However, the prosecutor did not agree with this verdict and appealed. Over the next 9 years, Jingen's verdict alternated between guilty and innocent. It was not until March 16, 1976, that the Supreme Court made its final judgment declaring Jingen guilty of murder. The decision was based on the fact that Jingen had told other inmates in Taipei prison 2 sentences, "I wish murder would only be a life sentence, and because Qin Guang was nosy, I strangled him." In addition, the judge pointed out that during the course of the incident, Jingen had many opportunities to escape, but he did not choose to leave halfway and only ran to his brother's house after he had finished disposing of the body. The judge thought that if he was truly innocent, why didn't he escape earlier? This showed that he was not completely innocent. Based on these doubts, the court finally found him guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced him to life in prison. As for Wanan, during the 9 years of trial, his death sentence was always upheld, and he was executed by firing squad on the 4th day after the final verdict. However, at that time, the public was no longer interested in Wanan's fate. Everyone's attention turned to the woman who had run away with Wanan Lu Wang. Everyone wanted to know why a mother of 5 children would abandon her family to follow a man who had just killed his wife and fled. Through investigation, everyone learned that Lu Wang and Wanan had known each other since childhood and were childhood sweethearts. They shared a common interest in painting, and their personalities were very compatible. Lu Wang later married Gangguan, but their marriage was not a happy one. Around 5:30 p.m., on July 9, 2007, a concussion explosion shattered the peace on Jinan Road in Jinan City, Shandong Province, China. The force of the blast had completely destroyed a Honda car, scattering the driver's body parts, some of which were found on the windows of nearby stores. A nearby taxi also caught fire, leaving the driver severely burned. Due to the severity of the explosion, a fruit vendor near the car was also injured, struck in the neck by debris and requiring over 10 stitches. The entire neighborhood was in chaos. Bystanders gathered, speculating wildly. Some thought it was a routine traffic accident, while others suspected a fuel tank explosion from a collision. But could an ordinary accident or fuel tank explosion have caused such devastating destruction? This question began to take root in the minds of the witnesses. Just minutes after the explosion, the police arrived at the scene. Through preliminary investigation, they confirmed 1 fatality, 1 pedestrian injury, significant damage to a taxi, and 2 other vehicles completely destroyed. With such a serious explosion occurring in the bustling city center, the investigators' urgent task was to determine the cause. Was this an unfortunate accident, or did a darker plot lie behind it? As the investigation delved deeper, the detectives realized the truly grave nature of the case. They discovered this was not a random explosion, but one carried out using TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive. This detail immediately revealed a terrifying truth. This was a premeditated murder. Through forensic analysis, the victim's identity was quickly established. She was 31-year-old Lu Ping, residing in a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment in the Ruyi residential community. The destroyed car was a brand new light blue Honda. But what drew the investigators' attention was not the victim's affluent lifestyle, but her unique status. A senior political cadre at the Jinan Municipal Land Resources Bureau and the deputy secretary of the Youth League Committee of the WRS agency. News of the horrific death of a female state official in the bustling streets quickly spread, triggering an earthquake of public opinion in Jinan. The case was immediately elevated to a higher level of investigation. Agonizing questions began to surface. Who could have harbored such deep hatred to use such a brutal method to kill a government official, and what led Lu Ping to pay the ultimate price? While it seemed that all traces had been erased by the explosion, a surprising discovery opened the first breakthrough in the investigation. In a trash can near the scene, the investigators found a shattered mobile phone and a remote control device. After extensive cross-referencing with telecom providers, they were able to identify the owner of the phone's SIM card as Chen Shi, a 50-year-old deputy team leader of the 3rd Squadron of the Jinan Municipal Public Security Bureau. This clue became even more suspicious when linked to the use of TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive that only those in special positions could access. As the investigators were considering this connection, another team of police, through questioning of local vendors and residents, learned that a police car had appeared near the site just before the explosion. Through the surveillance camera system and other investigative methods, they quickly determined this car belonged to the security team where Chen Shi was employed. In a covert investigation, the detectives examined this police car and confirmed that some of the residues found in the vehicle matched those from the explosion. This suggests that after using the car to commit the crime, the perpetrator had failed to thoroughly clean the vehicle, leaving a significant amount of explosive powder on the person and footprints of the culprit inside the police car. The security team and other units also confirmed that on the day of the incident, only Chen Shi's vehicle had appeared near the scene. All evidence was now pointing towards this deputy team leader. Another team of police had searched the victim Lu Ping's home and discovered more suspicious information, helping the investigation move closer to the truth. In Lu Ping's residence, the investigators found many photos, including one of her young son, some family photos, and surprisingly intimate photos of Lu Ping with a man. The shocking discovery was that the man in the photo was Duan Ahe, the director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress. Why were Duan Ahe's photos in Lu Ping's home? The nature of their relationship in those photos was clear without further explanation. There was only one possible explanation. Duan Ahe and Lu Ping were lovers, but a romantic relationship did not necessarily relate to the murder case. The police still needed to investigate further. With the initial hypothesis of a murder motivated by love or hatred, the investigators identified three primary suspects: Lu Ping's ex-husband, who may still harbor resentment, Chen Shi, the suspicious deputy team leader, and Duan Ahe, the secret lover of the victim. Each of them had the motive and capability to carry out this brutal act. The circle of suspicion quickly narrowed as the police eliminated Lu Ping's ex-husband from the suspect list. However, an unexpected discovery pushed the investigation in an entirely new direction: the special relationship between Chen Shi and Duan Ahe. Chen Shi was not just an ordinary police officer, but Duan Ahe's nephew-in-law. This revelation was like a lightning bolt splitting the night sky, making the investigators sense an even greater conspiracy unfolding. Just 3 days after the explosion on July 11th, with irrefutable evidence from the mobile phone and other physical evidence, Chen Shi was arrested in Qingdao. During the interrogation, in an atmosphere of tension disguised as a tea invitation, Chen Shi quickly realized his situation. As an experienced police officer, he understood that when his colleagues had traced his whereabouts, it meant they possessed evidence he could not refute. Thus, Chen Shi quickly confessed the entire crime process. As directed by Duan Ahe, only 4 days after the horrific explosion, an even greater earthquake had shaken the political circles of Jinan. The suspect, Duan Ahe, the incumbent director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress, a provincial-level official, was apprehended by a joint investigation team from the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission, the Provincial Public Security Department, and the Provincial Procuratorate. Faced with irrefutable evidence after just 1 hour of interrogation, the powerful official's facade completely collapsed. Duan Ahe admitted to orchestrating the explosion on July 9th, using his own nephew-in-law Chen Shi as a tool to carry out this evil plan. During the interrogation, he acknowledged his regret, but not for taking a life, only for the method he had chosen. With chilling indifference, Duan Ahe declared that if given the chance he would still kill Lu Ping, only he would choose a different method. In his tone, there was not a hint of remorse for the death of his former lover, only deep hatred and determination to end what he called their ill-fated romance in a way that was perfect to him. Behind those cold words lay the haunting question: what had transformed their love into such deep hatred? The answer began with Duan Ahe's testimony as he revealed the origin of this tragedy, a fleeting romance that had begun 14 years earlier. Duan Ahe was born on January 17, 1946, into a poor farming family. His childhood was full of hardship. The early mornings cutting grass in the mist, the long days herding buffalo under the sun, the late evenings feeding the pigs. A deep scar on the back of his left hand from a woodcutting accident remained an indelible mark of those difficult years, but poverty could not stop his ambition. Through extraordinary effort in 1965, he had passed the entrance exam to enter Shandong University as the first college student from his village. He became the pride of the local community, likened to a golden phoenix taking flight from the chicken coop. Duan Ahe did not disappoint those expectations. His college degree opened the door to his official career. With his shrewd interpersonal skills and exceptional capabilities, his career rose like a ship, sailing with the wind, step by step, climbing the ladder of power. At the peak of his power, Duan Ahe maintained the simple and approachable demeanor of his peasant origins. Whenever he visited his hometown, even as a high-ranking official, he insisted the driver stop the car outside the village. Alone, he would walk the familiar dirt roads, stopping to chat with the villagers, inquiring about their lives. A journey of just a few hundred meters that could be completed in minutes would often last an hour with him. These genuine gestures made the villagers absolutely trust that Duan Ahe was an incorruptible official, indifferent to fame and fortune. But fate has unexpected turns. Everything changed when a beautiful woman named Lu Ping entered his life. In 1996, a new opportunity for advancement came when Duan Ahe was transferred to Liaocheng, Shandong province. Since his wife, who was working at a provincial hospital at the time, could not accompany him, he had to go alone. After arriving in Liaocheng, Duan Ahe was arranged to stay in a guest house of the agency to take care of the living needs of the new official. The management arranged a young employee, Lu Ping. She was only 18 years old that year. Lu Ping was thoughtful and attentive, taking meticulous care of Duan Ahe. She would wash his dirty clothes, prepare delicious meals when he was hungry, and even have his toothpaste ready. In those lonely months away from his wife, Lu Ping's considerate care gradually invaded Duan Ahe's heart, sowing the seeds of an unnamed affection for the young Lu Ping. Duan Ahe represented not only a powerful official, but the embodiment of success and authority, an invisible magic that always had a strange allure for women. Gradually, their daily interactions ignited a feeling that went far beyond the ordinary relationship between an official and a servant. Duan Ahe was 48 years old, while Lu Ping was only 18. This significant age gap seemed to foreshadow the tragic ending of their relationship. When Duan Ahe was transferred back to Jinan, he should have ended this illicit affair. But unable to part with his young lover, he committed his first abuse of power. He arranged for Lu Ping to be transferred to work at a company under the Shandong Provincial Electronics Industry Bureau, and bought her a private apartment, creating a parallel life alongside his official family. Duan Ahe treated this mistress quite well. As he advanced, he did not forget to bring his young lover along on the climb up the social ladder. In late 1997, when he was promoted to a higher political rank with greater power, he used his influence to place Lu Ping in a position at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Not only that, he also bought her another apartment and a car. Under the shadow of Duan Ahe's power, Lu Ping quickly built a luxurious life in Jinan. Her name suddenly carried weight, even making other officials show her some respect. Not only enjoying this newfound wealth, Lu Ping also cleverly seized the opportunity to take care of her own family. She brought her parents and younger sister to Jinan, and through whispers on the pillow, persuaded Duan Ahe to arrange jobs and household registration for her relatives. Lu Ping's insatiable greed had led the once incorruptible Duan Ahe down the path of corruption. To satisfy her constant demands, he was forced to start accepting money to expedite matters. When rumors of his corruption reached the ears of Duan Ahe's wife, her reaction surprised many. Instead of demanding a divorce, she chose to persuade her husband, hoping he would stop before it was too late. In front of his wife, Duan Ahe pretended to listen and declared he had cut ties with Lu Ping. But behind those promises, he continued to cheat, turning his relationship with the young lover into an even more carefully hidden, illicit affair. To deceive the public, Lu Ping even married a doctor, but in reality the two continued their secret trysts. The truth was finally exposed when the doctor husband discovered this hidden relationship and filed for divorce. Ironically, Duan Ehi not only destroyed his own family but also contributed to the collapse of his lover's marriage. The sense of betrayal and injury gradually transformed into an insatiable greed in Lu Ping's heart. If she could not possess this man's heart completely, she was determined to exploit his power to the fullest. In her mind, a twisted logic took shape. If she could not have his love, she would demand as much material wealth as possible, as a guarantee for her own precarious future. In 2006, with ever-growing ambition, Lu Ping requested a job transfer. But it seemed nothing could fill the abyss of ambition within this woman. She continued to demand a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment and the latest car model. This was the residence and car she was using when the incident occurred. Lu Ping's greed was not simply a desire for material goods, but rooted in the loneliness and resentment that had accumulated in the vast and cold apartment. She lived a shadowy existence, waiting only for Duan Ehi's hurried visits at 10 p.m. After years of living in the darkness of their illicit affair, Lu Ping craved an official status, wanting to marry Duan Ehi and stand beside him openly, no longer having to hide behind the walls of deception. But for Duan Ehi, from the very beginning, she was just a fleeting romance, never to become his legitimate wife. The arguments between them grew increasingly violent, and in her anger, Lu Ping began to use their secret relationship as a double-edged sword, threatening her older lover. This had enraged Duan Ehi greatly. He felt that, after he had elevated Lu Ping so much, she had become ungrateful and unappreciative. Therefore, he began to seek ways to eliminate this threat. Lu Ping's threats were like strong winds blowing at the tree of Duan Ehi's power. The fear of his secret being exposed gradually transformed into a dark intent in his mind. Though he tried to suppress it, the thought of eliminating this threat continued to smolder in his heart, waiting to erupt. In his daily work, Duan Ehi silently sought someone to carry out this plan. This person had to be not only trustworthy enough to keep the bloody story secret, but also bold enough to execute it. After many sleepless nights, he decided to choose his nephew-in-law Chen Shi as the son-in-law of Duan Ehi's elder brother. Chen Shi owed a considerable debt of gratitude to Duan Ehi, who had used his power to secure the police officer's position and help him advance. This familial relationship, reinforced by privileges and benefits, was an invisible chain binding their fates. In Duan Ehi's eyes, this was the perfect tool for his sinister plan. In 2007, when Chen Shi visited Duan Ehi's home for the Lunar New Year, he spoke to him about his troubles and expressed a desire for him to deal with Lu Ping. Chen Shi immediately agreed, saying that since his work was all arranged by Duan Ehi, he naturally had to help him solve this problem. After discussion, they decided to eliminate Lu Ping through a staged traffic accident. But they later found that Lu Ping's activities were mostly confined to the city center, where it would be difficult to gain enough speed. If they acted carelessly, not only would they fail to kill Lu Ping, but they could also expose their own identity. Therefore, this plan was abandoned. With the first plan failing, Chen Shi came up with another idea. As a former military engineer, he knew how to manufacture explosives. He thought of using an explosive device to resolve this issue. After the explosion, all traces of the crime would be completely erased, a seemingly perfect strategy. After Chen Shi shared this idea, Duan Ehi also found it to be a good one. He provided Chen Shi with detailed information about Lu Ping, such as her home address and car keys. As a police officer, Chen Shi easily exploited his network of connections to obtain the controlled explosive. He had a good relationship with a garage owner named Qin Chongbing, 40 years old, who was skilled in remote-control car devices. In the privacy of the garage, the two began their deadly experiments. The first 2 detonation tests were carried out to practice, leaving the final 3 triggers for the real act. Along with 2 kilograms of explosives and a remote control they had secretly constructed, they created a weapon that could tear apart metal and flesh in an instant. But as the murder weapon was completed, something in Chen Shi's conscience suddenly awakened. He began to hesitate before the destructive power of what he had created. The thought that a simple button press could take a life, leaving no chance for redemption, began to haunt his mind. Though Duan Ehai constantly urged him on, Chen Shi continued to find ways to delay. In July 2007, Chen Shi could no longer postpone it. On the afternoon of July 9th, Chen Shi and Chong Bing drove the police car to the area where Lu Ping worked. Holding the bomb, they quickly located Lu Ping's light blue Honda. With trembling hands, they used Duan Ehai's remote control to open the car door, then carefully placed the deadly bomb under the driver's seat. In just a brief minute, they had completed the entire process. As it was their first time doing something like this, after placing the bomb, they hastily left the scene. On the road where Lu Ping usually drove home, the 2 evil perpetrators held their breath, waiting for their target. But fate played a cruel trick. After just 5 minutes of surveillance, they lost sight of the victim. Chen Shi decided to take a desperate final move, driving to Jina Road, the familiar route Lu Ping always took. Here they patiently waited for her to pass by. Chen Shi, with a shaky hand on the remote control, sat silently in the police car, waiting for the signal to activate the devastating device, while Chong Bing got out to observe, ready for the signal. When Lu Ping appeared at the time, there were many vendors and elderly people sitting and enjoying the cool air. To ensure Lu Ping would pass through here, Chong Bing even casually asked an elderly woman sitting nearby, "Is this the Ruyi residential community up ahead?" This seemingly innocuous question, coupled with the unusual tense expression and accent of the strange man, caught the old woman's attention. A few minutes later, Lu Ping's light blue Honda appeared on the street. That afternoon, unaware of the impending tragedy, Chong Bing quickly made the call. Just seconds later, a horrific explosion tore through the peaceful evening air. The devastating power of the blast not only destroyed the car and its occupant, but also injured a street vendor nearby. This was the explosion on July 9th in Jinan that shook all of China. While the panicked crowd rushed and scrambled in chaos, a pair of keen-aged eyes did not miss an unusual detail. The strange man with the unfamiliar accent had hurriedly jumped into a police car and disappeared into the chaotic traffic. Noticing this peculiar detail, the elderly woman managed to jot down the license plate number of that police car, a seemingly minor detail that would become a key to unlocking the secret of the case. On July 13th, Duan Ehai was taken away from his office. Within an hour, he had confessed everything and provided a long list of his social connections. After the trial, the court determined that Duan Ehai had abused his position to receive and demand property from others, totaling 1.69 million yuan, approximately $250,000 in cash, and 1.33 million yuan, approximately $195,000 in assets of unknown legal origin. Thus, a bomb explosion had led to the exposure of corruption among government officials, and the investigation began to expand. In this tragedy, Qin Chongbing had shown himself to be no passive pawn. With the keen instincts of someone who had weathered many storms, he had sensed the tragic fate awaiting him. Before his destiny was sealed, he had told his family, "If I die, it is certainly Duan Ehai who killed me." Duan Ehai had also thought he could use his power to conclude the incident as an accidental death due to the hot weather causing a fuel tank explosion. But he did not realize that the distance to his own death was only 59 days away. After the incident, he was quickly arrested, but he did not think he would be sentenced to death. He thought they would give him a chance at rehabilitation to enjoy his old age. Therefore, throughout the interrogation, Duan Ehai remained quite relaxed and cooperative. During the questioning, he even recounted his entire 61-year life story in the interrogation room. The three perpetrators revealed different faces before justice. Chin Chong Bing, with a miserable expression, desperately pleaded, citing the moments of hesitation before attaching the explosive device as evidence of his intention to abandon the crime. Chen Shi, trying to avoid the death penalty, repeatedly claimed he was just a victim of Duan Ahe's coercion. As for Duan Ahe, he admitted his guilt. However, when the prosecutor asked him if he regretted it and what he would do if given another chance, his answer chilled. Even the seasoned investigators, I do regret, but only for choosing to use explosives. If given the chance to do it again, I would still kill her. In fact, this was not the first time Duan Ahe had plotted to eliminate his lover. He said he had previously planned to kill her through gas poisoning, tire blowout on the highway, and many other methods, but all had failed. There was one time when Lu Ping's car had a flat tire before getting on the highway, and Duan Ahe not only failed to kill her, but had to take responsibility for fixing her car. Ultimately, the court sentenced the defendant Duan Ahe and Chen Shi to death, while the defendant Chin Chong Bing was sentenced to life imprisonment. The romance between Lu Ping and Duan Ahe showed that the 30-year age gap was not just a number, but a chasm that could not be filled by money or power. When selfish love intertwined with corrupted power, tragedy was inevitable. On March 9, 2023, Jia's mother visited her daughter's home in Yanjian to clean. While tidying the bedroom, she noticed a refrigerator in the corner, covered with miscellaneous items. Seeing that it hadn't been cleaned for a long time, she decided to clean both the inside and outside while her daughter was away. Clearing away the clutter, she removed the sealing tape from the fridge and opened it. On the top shelf, she found some frozen beef and lamb. However, at the bottom of the fridge, she noticed a large object. Clearing away the remaining items, she discovered something horrifying. Her son-in-law Fan Hunggu, who had been missing for 15 months, frozen solid alongside the meat. Upon finding Fan's curled-up body in the fridge, Jia's mother was paralyzed with fear and immediately ran out of the room to call her daughter. When Jia returned home and saw her panicked mother, she realized her secret, hidden for over a year, had been exposed. She confessed to her mother that she had killed her husband and stored his body in the refrigerator. Following her mother's insistence, Jia called the police and turned herself in. News of the Suzhou refrigerator murder case quickly went viral on social media, shocking the nation. The couple had been newlyweds, striving for their careers. Yet after 15 long months of lies and deception, their story turned into a horrifying tragedy. The victim, Fan Hunggu, was born in 1991 in Honghu Province. He was the second of 3 brothers in a family that started from humble beginnings. His parents had worked tirelessly, selling pancakes from a 3-wheeled cart to raise their sons. Among the 3, Fan was the most successful. After graduating high school, he was admitted to Suzhou University, becoming the pride of his family as he worked hard to live up to their expectations. However, his post-graduation career wasn't ideal. After several job changes, he landed a position as a real estate broker in 2015. Initially, his family and friends didn't understand his choice, as the job didn't seem to align with his academic background. In their eyes, he had chosen the wrong career path. But it didn't take long for Fan to prove that his decision was well-founded. At the time, Fan foresaw the potential in the real estate industry. In October 2016, shortly after starting his career, Suzhou implemented real estate regulations such as purchase restrictions and loan limitations. Before these policies took effect, residents of Suzhou and even people from other regions were eager to buy property in the city. The real estate market was so hot that houses sold almost instantly after being listed, and brokers could make significant profits. Fan Hunggu, as a real estate agent, entered the market at the perfect time. The demand was so high that many clients proactively contacted him to purchase homes, resulting in an exceptionally high transaction closure rate. Combined with his strong work ethic, he achieved remarkable success, earning a substantial income. Thanks to his outstanding performance, he was promoted to a managerial position at his company. Not only did his career thrive, but Fan also found the love of his life. In 2016, shortly after starting his job, he met Jia, a colleague 2 years younger than him, born in 1993. Jia was a native of Suzhou. She was perceived as introverted and quiet. As they spent more time together, their affection gradually grew. On February 20, 2017, they officially confirmed their romantic relationship. After they started dating, Fan often shared their happy moments. He added his girlfriend's initials to his online ID, and on the 20th of every month posted memories of their time together. On special occasions, Fan created romantic surprises. Over 17 months, he meticulously documented their moments together and frequently expressed his love for Jia. Jia, however, fully immersed in her own world, didn't reciprocate the same enthusiasm toward Fan's romantic gestures. Her online account mainly reflected her personal life, featuring posts about her favorite celebrities and entertainment news, along with occasional negative or profane remarks. Rarely did she interact with her boyfriend online, except for one post in late 2018 about attending a Jackie Chung concert where they had secured front row seats. Jia's lack of engagement online mirrored her behavior in real life. Fan's older brother once discreetly remarked about her aloofness, noting that Jia was reserved, rarely smiled, and maintained a distant attitude toward Fan's family. From his perspective, he believed Fan deserved someone better. However, considering Jia was a Suzhou native from a well-off family that had received compensation for redevelopment projects, he ultimately refrained from voicing his concerns. In 2019, Fan, using his savings supplemented by support from his parents, purchased a home in Suzhou. That same year, Jia discovered she was pregnant. In early 2020, they registered their marriage, and on February 3, 2020, their daughter was born. Fan's Weibo posts, which previously focused on his relationship with Jia, began documenting his daughter's milestones from her birth to sleepless nights spent soothing her. He posted a total of 32 entries about her growth. During this period of career advancement, Fan found additional motivation in his daughter. He took on the responsibility of supporting the family, allowing Jia to stay home and care for their child. Confident in his career, Fan decided to leave his job to start his own business, aiming for greater success. After leaving his job, Fan joined a brand under one of the country's leading real estate brokerage companies, leveraging his years of experience. He began managing and operating his own real estate brokerage firm. However, starting in 2020, as he embarked on his entrepreneurial journey, the real estate industry began to face challenges due to the pandemic and other factors. The once thriving market started to slow down, casting a shadow over his family's future. As his business struggled and his income fell short of expectations, family issues began to surface. Initially, Jia's quiet personality turned colder. For instance, after giving birth, Fan's mother, Jia's mother-in-law, came to care for her for a month. Yet during that entire time, Jia never addressed her as mother. Such indifference puzzled everyone. Fan believed Jia's attitude stemmed from the fact that they had not yet held a formal wedding ceremony, which remained a lingering issue in his mind. Concerned about his wife potentially experiencing postpartum depression, Fan arranged a wedding ceremony on October 1, 2020. Following the ceremony, the couple moved into Jia's family's relocation apartment in Yanjian, just about 2 miles from their real estate brokerage. Cracks in their relationship began to appear soon after. For days after their wedding, they had a heated argument when Fan accidentally woke their daughter, who had just fallen asleep, by entering the bedroom. Still upset after the argument, Jia vented her frustrations on Weibo, using vulgar language that demonstrated her lack of respect for her husband. As time went on, the real estate market entered a challenging phase. By 2021, older properties in Suzhou were brought under stricter management regulations. These new conditions made transactions increasingly difficult, forcing many small real estate businesses to struggle for survival. Small brokerage firms, including Fan's, were ultimately forced to shut down, cutting off his family's income. Despite this financial strain, Jia became engrossed in watching live streams and developed an uncontrollable habit of sending extravagant virtual gifts. Obsessed with the idea of becoming a top-ranking fan for certain streamers, she indulged in this behavior without restraint. While the family's income had been severed, Jia secretly continued spending money online, adding invisible financial pressure to the household. A tense and suffocating atmosphere quietly developed between them. In 2021, the couple decided to try their hand at online entrepreneurship. On September 19th, they registered a cultural media company planning to create content, reviewing local businesses, and generate income through live stream sales. However, their efforts failed to gain much attention. They also took on some minor gigs to boost video views, but continued to struggle in this field. Meanwhile, Fan discovered that Jia had been sending expensive gifts to male streamers online. By October 2021, Fan confided in his brother during a trip back to their hometown, revealing that Jia had spent hundreds of thousands of yuan gifting streamers. Jia explained that these gifts were different from standard in-app purchases. If she could become the top contributor for a streamer, she would earn a VIP account, which she claimed could be used to review and rate restaurants and other venues. As a result, the money was lost, and Jia realized she had been scammed. The promised refunds never materialized. The funds she used had been borrowed or charged to credit cards. It's unclear how Jia dealt with this crisis, but Fan ended up selling the house he and his family had purchased before their marriage to pay off the debt. Fan's family was puzzled by this turn of events, but gradually understood that Fan and Jia were facing financial difficulties. On November 24, 2021, Fan Honggu returned to his hometown of Honghu to pay respects to his ancestors before traveling back to Suzhou alone. His family could not have imagined that this would be their final meeting with him. By December 2021, approximately 20 days later, Fan's family found it increasingly difficult to contact him. He stopped answering phone calls and video chats, responding only through text messages. Fan's mother grew worried, but could only ask Jia about his whereabouts. Jia explained that due to business failures and mounting debts, Fan had left Suzhou to escape creditors and was too afraid to contact his family. Since their business had indeed been struggling, the family initially accepted this explanation. Occasionally, Fan's WeChat moments were updated, and when the family asked about him, they even received location shares, which somewhat reassured them. During this time, Jia frequently comforted Fan's family, urging them not to worry too much. She claimed the couple remained in contact, and that Fan would return once their financial troubles were resolved. However, over the next 2 months, Fan began asking his family for money. The first request was for 30,000 yuan to cover overdue rent. The second was a plea for help to repay a 43,000 yuan loan he had supposedly borrowed from his mother-in-law before leaving. In total, numerous reasons were given to request financial support. Fan's family was not wealthy, but each time Fan texted asking for money, whether it was a few thousand or tens of thousands of yuan, his mother sent the funds, hoping it would help him overcome his difficulties and return home soon. The brutal truth, however, was the chilling reality revealed at the beginning of this story. By then, Fan was already curled up in the refrigerator at his home. The person who had been maintaining contact with Fan's family and persistently requesting money was none other than Jia, the quiet and reserved woman they all knew. As time passed, the Lunar New Year of 2022 arrived. Fan's parents visited their son's home, only to find that he still had not returned. Their granddaughter frequently expressed how much she missed her father, which broke their hearts. After having a meal and sitting for a while, the couple left. Later, Fan's brothers received another request for money, this time to cover installments for a home loan. By now, 3 months had passed since their last contact with Fan, and the family finally realized something was seriously wrong. Yet they still didn't suspect Gia. They believed instead that Fan might have fallen victim to a pyramid scheme. After discussing the situation, they decided to report the case to the police, together with Gia. On February 24, 2022, the local police station in Fan Hungu's district received a missing person report. Fan's family visited the station 4 times to inquire about the case, but Gia repeatedly obstructed the investigation. On one hand, she proactively told the police that her husband had fled to escape, the debts was working far from home, and that they were still in regular contact. She even claimed that Fan frequently communicated with his friends and colleagues. On the other hand, she reassured Fan's family, saying that he likely avoided them because he didn't want them to see him in his diminished state. With no significant progress or adverse findings from the police investigation, Fan's family reluctantly accepted Gia's explanation. They even felt sorry for her, believing she was struggling alone to raise their daughter while Fan's supposed escape from debt left them living in hardship. Fan's older brother grew increasingly frustrated and sent an angry message to his younger brother, scolding him for failing to call home to assure them of his safety. He even questioned whether the person replying to the text was really Fan. Despite his demands, the responses remained limited to text messages, with no calls. As the agonizing wait continued, the Mid-Autumn Festival of 2022 approached. Fan's parents planned to visit Yanjian to see their granddaughter, but Gia's mother informed them that 2 months earlier Gia had suddenly moved out with her daughter. She had taken only the television and refrigerator, and had not even informed her own mother of her departure. Concerned by the sudden disappearance, Gia's mother reported the situation to the police. The police quickly traced Gia to a rental apartment in Shuangfeng district. When Gia's mother visited her there, Gia appeared annoyed and refused to explain her reasons for moving. Unable to persuade her, Gia's mother eventually returned home. Fan's parents worried about Gia, and their granddaughter decided to visit the apartment on the morning of the Mid-Autumn Festival to celebrate together. During their visit, Fan's older brother noticed the refrigerator that had been moved from the previous home. The refrigerator was plugged in but sealed shut with tape, which struck him as unusual. However, out of respect for Gia, he refrained from asking questions. In October 2022, Gia suddenly returned with her daughter to their former home. By the Lunar New Year of 2023, she even took her daughter to Fan's hometown to celebrate. Gia reassured the family that their debt problems were nearly resolved and expressed confidence that Fan would soon return. Clinging to this fragile hope, Fan's family endured another holiday without him. On March 8, 2023, 15 months after Fan's disappearance, the family received a message from him stating, "I plan to come home next month." Their relief was short-lived. The very next day, on March 9th, Gia's mother discovered the secret that had been hidden for 15 months inside the refrigerator. Following her mother's insistence, Gia confessed to the police and was immediately arrested. Authorities conducted an autopsy on Fan Hungu. According to information obtained from media interviews with Fan's relatives, the cause of death was determined to be drug poisoning and carbon monoxide poisoning. Gia had later placed his body in the refrigerator. The specific timeline and details of what occurred that day remain undisclosed. When questioned about her motive, Gia simply attributed it to family disputes. Needless to say, the money Fan's family provided to help resolve his debts ended up in Gia's hands. She deceived Fan's parents into giving her 200,000 yuan, borrowed 50,000 yuan from his younger brother, and even obtained 120,000 yuan from her own parents, under the pretense of helping Fan. In total, she swindled 370,000 yuan, roughly equivalent to $50,000 based on current exchange rates. The reason for her insatiable need for funds was her uncontrollable spending habits, primarily driven by her obsession with sending extravagant virtual gifts to streamers. This financial strain may have been the catalyst for her decision to murder her husband. Even after killing her husband, Jia continued to be an avid fan of a music streamer, climbing to the top of his fan leaderboard. To express his gratitude for her unwavering support, the streamer dedicated several posts to her. Jia's relationship with the streamer placed her far ahead of other fans in terms of interaction and recognition. The streamer prominently acknowledged her in his music content on the platform. Jia's account achieved the rank of Duke, a title requiring at least 30 million experience points, equivalent to spending 300,000 yuan on virtual gifts. Reports indicate that this streamer also resided in Suzhou. A few months after Fan's murder, Jia began interacting with him more frequently. Unlike the reserved, quiet persona known to her acquaintances, Jia appeared active and even flirtatious in her interactions with the streamer. Her Weibo posts during this period hinted at an emotional entanglement, with melancholic reflections that seemed to stem from a romantic involvement. It became clear that these feelings were not directed toward her deceased husband. Netizens speculated that Jia and the streamer had a questionable relationship, as the large sums of money she deceitfully obtained were voluntarily spent on gifts for him. Amid public outcry, the media company representing the streamer issued a statement denying that Jia had spent 300,000 yuan on him. They also claimed that Jia met the streamer after Fan's death, asserting that the marital conflict between Jia and Fan had no connection to the streamer. When pressed by the media, the streamer responded with a single statement: "I didn't know she was married." However, Fan had reportedly discovered his wife's reckless spending on streamers and her mounting debts before his murder, suggesting that Jia might have been supporting multiple streamers during this time. Jia's short video account was frequently updated. In the digital world, she carefully curated her videos, featuring scenes of gourmet dining, gaming, traveling, and reflective captions. All the while, she lived in the same house as her husband's corpse. This behavior revealed a chilling lack of remorse or guilt. She calmly posted selfies and wrote soul-healing captions, seemingly convincing herself of her own narrative. However, the police believe that for a seemingly gentle woman to go from conceiving the idea of murder to carrying it out, there must have been something that pushed her beyond her mental limits. These limits for most people are often tied to money, relationships, or family dynamics. Based on the available information, Fan Henggu was a loving father, a dutiful son, and a family-oriented individual. He was willing to sell their home to pay off debts resulting from his wife's poor decisions, which ultimately led to him being swindled out of hundreds of thousands of yuan. There is no evidence to suggest that Fan was extravagant or had personal lifestyle issues. If the murder stemmed from irreconcilable conflicts caused by his mistakes, Jia, as the more vulnerable party, would not have needed to hide anything. Moreover, her continued deceit toward Fan's family afterward clearly indicates where the fault lies. Jia appeared to lack affection for Fan, at least after their marriage. The unplanned pregnancy seemed to have hastened their union. Combined with the failure of their business, she was unhappy in the marriage. Outwardly, she tried to maintain the appearance of normalcy, but inwardly, she relied on something to compensate for her dissatisfaction. This became a secret she hid through lies, a secret that likely contradicted the image she presented to the world. Fan may have uncovered her true nature through certain events. This realization could have made Jia feel unprecedentedly threatened, prompting her to eliminate him to avoid exposure. At its core, the crime leans toward a premeditated silencing of the victim. Gia likely understood that her lies about Fan fleeing to escape debts would eventually unravel. Her unrelenting fraudulent behavior afterward is evidence of this. Since her last hearing on December 21, 2023, the Suzhou Intermediate People's Court held a trial for Gia on charges of intentional homicide and fraud. The court did not announce the verdict immediately after the hearing. Fan's family stated they would not forgive the defendant. Their demands included the maximum penalty and full compensation for the financial losses they had suffered. The question of whether Jia Dongul will face the death penalty has become a topic of public interest. While she turned herself in, this does not automatically guarantee leniency. In many death penalty cases, even when defendants confess, the courts may rule that the confession alone is insufficient to warrant a lighter sentence. This case has drawn comparisons to the 2016 Shanghai freezer murder, in which Xu Xiaodong hid his wife's body in a freezer for 105 days. Xu eventually surrendered to the police, but was sentenced to death. Other mitigating factors that might reduce a sentence include forgiveness from the victim's family, being pregnant, or making significant contributions to society. For Gia, only forgiveness from Fan's family could apply. However, Fan Honggu's family has refused to grant forgiveness or waive their civil compensation claims, demonstrating a firm resolve to hold her fully accountable. At this point, the court needs to determine whether Gia planned the crime in advance. If it is proven that she used pre-prepared poison, this would qualify as premeditated murder. Following the act, her efforts to conceal the crime, evade investigation, exploit the victim's identity for fraud, and show no remorse demonstrate an extremely malicious and deliberate intent. Although the court has not yet delivered a verdict considering the severity of this heinous crime, the need to create a deterrent effect in society and the precedent set by similar cases, Gia is highly likely to receive the death penalty. However, the final outcome, or the possibility of an appeal reversing the decision, remains uncertain. And until the official sentencing, the year is 1971, a humid summer evening in a small town nestled amidst the verdant hills of central Taiwan. The air hangs heavy with the scent of jasmine and the chirping of crickets, a deceptive tranquility masking the simmering tension that gripped the local community. A young woman named Lin Meihua, barely 20 years old, vanished without a trace. Her disappearance sent ripples of unease through the tight-knit neighborhood. Lin Meihua was known for her gentle nature and cheerful disposition. She worked as a seamstress in a small garment factory just outside of town, her nimble fingers expertly weaving together threads of fabric and dreams. She lived with her parents and younger brother in a modest single-story house, a picture of simple family life. Her daily routine was predictable. Wake at dawn, prepare breakfast for her family, walk to the factory, return home at dusk, help with household chores. But on that particular evening, she never returned. The next morning, her absence sparked immediate alarm. Her family searched frantically, their calls to friends and relatives met with growing dread as each passing hour revealed no sign of Meihua. Her workplace confirmed she never showed up for her shift. There was no note, no explanation, no indication of where she might have gone. The local police were notified. The investigation began, but the small town's resources were limited. The initial search focused on the immediate vicinity yielded nothing. The lack of leads led the police to expand their search further, exploring the more remote areas surrounding the town. Days turned into weeks. The search expanded. Flyers bearing Meihua's picture and a description of her clothing were distributed throughout the region. News of her disappearance spread beyond the small community, reaching neighboring towns and eventually even the larger cities. But despite their efforts, the trail remained cold. No witnesses came forward with any information about Meihua's whereabouts. The investigation team, faced with a frustrating lack of progress, began to examine Mei Hua's personal life. They interviewed friends, co-workers, and family members in search of some clue, some hint about what might have happened. Her family described her as a kind, trusting young woman with no known enemies. Her co-workers confirmed she was well-liked, a quiet but diligent worker who kept to herself. There was no evidence of any romantic relationships, no significant conflicts with anyone, no signs of trouble. Her disappearance remained a baffling mystery. As weeks stretched into months and then into years, the possibility of finding Mei Hua alive began to fade. The case, once a local concern, became a cold case, its unsolved nature a constant reminder of the town's vulnerability. The Lin family never gave up hope, but their search, once fueled by immediate concern, gradually became a quiet vigil, a testament to their enduring love and unwavering faith in her eventual return. The jasmine continued to bloom each summer, its fragrance a bittersweet reminder of the young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an enigma that defied all attempts at explanation, an unanswered question etched in the heart of the town's collective memory. A haunting silence fell over the verdant hills, a testament to a mystery that lingered long after the scent of jasmine had faded. The year is 2023. A quiet, unassuming town nestled amongst the rolling hills of rural Japan. The rhythmic chirping of cicadas fills the air, a constant soundtrack to the slow pace of life. But beneath this veneer of tranquility lies a chilling secret, a mystery that has haunted the community for decades. A story whispered in hushed tones, a tale of a young woman named Sato Akari who vanished without a trace. Akari, a vibrant and vivacious 19-year-old, was a beloved member of the community. She worked part-time at the local bakery, her infectious smile brightening the day of every customer. Akari was known for her kindness, her artistic talent, and her dream of becoming a renowned manga artist. She filled notebooks with sketches, her imagination overflowing onto the page in a whirlwind of vibrant characters and fantastical landscapes. She was the town's rising star, a beacon of youthful energy and hope. Then, on a seemingly ordinary summer evening, Akari disappeared. She left her home without a word, leaving behind her prized sketchbooks, her unfinished artwork, her cherished collection of manga. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of foul play. Her family reported her missing to the police, but the initial investigation yielded little. The search for Akari mobilized the entire town. Volunteers combed through the surrounding forests, their calls echoing through the trees, their hearts heavy with worry. The local police joined the search, expanding their efforts beyond the immediate vicinity. Days turned into weeks, and the search continued, but Akari remained elusive. The trail had gone cold, leading to a dead end. Despite their extensive efforts, the police found no clues, no witnesses, and no sign of Akari's whereabouts. Frustrated by their lack of progress, the police began to explore various theories. Was Akari's disappearance the result of a runaway incident, a sudden decision born out of youthful rebellion, or was something far more sinister at play? As they examined Akari's background, they discovered that she had recently had a falling out with a close friend, a young man named Kenji, who had apparently been secretly harboring feelings for her. Kenji, a quiet and reserved young man, had been unable to cope with Akari's rejection, becoming increasingly withdrawn and isolated after their quarrel. Could he be involved in Akari's disappearance? The police questioned Kenji extensively, but he maintained his innocence, offering no evidence or explanation for Akari's whereabouts. Although they found no concrete evidence linking Kenji to Akari's disappearance, the investigators couldn't rule him out entirely. The mystery remained. The years passed, and the case grew colder. Akari's picture, once plastered across the town's notice boards, faded with time, becoming a ghost of a memory and echo in the local consciousness. The town, once vibrant with the promise of Akari's future, was left with a haunting silence. Her family's relentless search, once filled with hope and determination, gradually became a somber vigil, a heart-wrenching testament to their enduring grief. The rhythmic chirping of cicadas continued the familiar soundscape, unchanged yet now, carrying an undercurrent of sadness. A constant reminder of the missing girl, the mystery of her disappearance, lingering like a persistent shadow over the tranquil countryside. The years passed, leaving only unanswered questions and a heart-wrenching mystery that continued to haunt the town. Then, decades later, a new development unexpectedly emerged. During a routine road construction project on the outskirts of town, workers unearthed a partially decomposed skeleton buried beneath the newly laid asphalt. The skeleton was that of a young woman. Forensic examination indicated that the remains dated back to around the time of Akari's disappearance. Further analysis revealed a distinctive feature on the skull, a slight asymmetry matching a unique birthmark Akari had on the side of her forehead. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. Could this be Akari? The DNA results confirmed it. The remains were without a doubt those of Sato Akari. But how did she end up buried beneath the road, and who was responsible for her death? The sudden revelation reopened the old case, reviving the long-dormant investigation. The police revisited old leads, interviewed previous witnesses, and expanded the search for new evidence. The tranquil town was once again gripped by a wave of suspicion and uncertainty as the chilling mystery of Akari's disappearance became a murder investigation. The cicadas still chirped their relentless song, now a mournful accompaniment to a long unsolved mystery finally coming to light. The renewed investigation focused on Kenji Akari's former friend. He was now in his late 30s, a quiet and unassuming man working a steady job at a local factory. The police interviewed him again, this time with a renewed sense of urgency and suspicion. Kenji, however, remained steadfast in his denial of any involvement in Akari's disappearance. He offered no new information and maintained his previous alibi. The investigators, however, noted something peculiar about Kenji's demeanor during this interrogation. While outwardly calm, his body language betrayed a hint of unease. His eyes darted nervously, his hands trembled slightly, and he frequently avoided direct eye contact. These subtle cues, though not concrete evidence, fueled the investigators' suspicion, suggesting that Kenji might be concealing something. Further investigation into Kenji's life revealed a pattern of erratic behavior following Akari's disappearance. He had abruptly quit his previous job, withdrawn from social activities, and exhibited signs of severe anxiety and depression. He had also started exhibiting a compulsive behavior, incessantly visiting the site where Akari's body was later found, seemingly drawn to the area in an unsettling, obsessive manner. The police examined the site where Akari's body was discovered. The area, previously a vacant lot, had been slated for a road construction project. The investigators meticulously examined the surrounding soil, searching for additional evidence that may have been missed during the initial excavation. They found traces of disturbed earth, suggesting that the body had been buried in a hastily dug grave. The soil analysis revealed traces of a unique type of fertilizer that was only used on a particular farm, several miles away from the site. The farm belonged to Kenji's family. This new piece of evidence strongly suggested that Kenji was involved in Akari's death and had attempted to conceal the body. The investigators obtained a search warrant for Kenji's family farm. The search yielded significant findings. Several shovels and other digging implements were found in Kenji's shed, their surfaces caked with a soil that matched the soil found at the burial site. Moreover, traces of Akari's blood were discovered on one of the shovels. These findings provided strong circumstantial evidence linking Kenji to the crime. The investigators also discovered old letters amongst Kenji's personal effects, letters written by Kenji to Akari before her disappearance. The letters revealed a passionate, almost obsessive love that Kenji harbored for Akari, a feeling that intensified after their falling out. The letters expressed Kenji's intense frustration and despair at Akari's rejection. The tone of the letters suggested that he had become increasingly unstable and emotionally volatile leading up to her disappearance. The investigators also found a diary kept by Kenji, detailing his actions leading up to and following Akari's disappearance. The diary confirmed that Kenji had followed Akari on the day of her disappearance, and it described in chilling detail how he had lured her to the vacant lot before violently attacking her. The diary confirmed that he had buried Akari's body himself, desperately attempting to conceal his actions. This diary entry served as a confession of his guilt, outlining his meticulous efforts to dispose of the body and cover his tracks. The evidence was irrefutable. Kenji was arrested and charged with the murder of Sato Akari. His trial was highly publicized, generating considerable attention within the small Japanese town. Kenji, throughout his trial, maintained his innocence, claiming that his diary entries were simply a fictional account, a work of creative writing intended to process his feelings of grief and loss. However, confronted with the overwhelming amount of physical evidence, his arguments proved unconvincing. The court found Kenji guilty of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The quiet town, once shaken by Akari's disappearance, was finally granted a sense of closure, though it was a closure tinged with grief and tragedy. The rhythmic chirping of cicadas continued their song, a constant reminder of the life lost and the justice served, a bittersweet symphony playing out against the backdrop of the Japanese countryside. The story of Akari's death, once a hushed whisper, became a stark reminder of the darkness that can lie hidden beneath even the most tranquil surfaces. The case of Sato Akari's murder, however, didn't end with Kenji's conviction. A nagging question remained. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Kenji, several inconsistencies plagued the investigation. While the diary detailed Kenji's actions, certain aspects of his account didn't entirely match the physical evidence. For instance, the diary described a struggle between Kenji and Akari, suggesting a prolonged fight before her death. The forensic evidence, however, indicated that Akari had been struck a single fatal blow to the head. This discrepancy suggested that either Kenji's memory was faulty, or he was deliberately omitting key details from his confession. The investigators returned to the crime scene, meticulously re-examining the area for any overlooked clues. They focused their attention on the immediate surroundings of the burial site, searching for any traces of a secondary individual's presence. Their efforts eventually paid off. Hidden beneath a layer of overgrown vegetation, they discovered a small, partially buried object, a silver hairpin. The hairpin was intricately designed, featuring a small, intricately carved cherry blossom. This hairpin was distinctive, unlike anything the investigators had encountered in their initial examination of Akari's belongings. Further investigation revealed that the hairpin was not Akari's. It belonged to another young woman who lived in the same town, Yamamoto Hane. Hane, 22, was a close acquaintance of Akari's, known for her quiet nature and reserved demeanor. The police interviewed Hane, discovering a long-standing, somewhat strained relationship between her and Kenji. Hane, like Akari, had previously rejected Kenji's romantic advances, leading to a period of resentment and bitterness between them. This discovery opened a new avenue of investigation. The police revisited the initial interviews conducted with Hane, looking for previously overlooked details. They discovered that Hane had been in possession of a similar silver hairpin before Akari's disappearance, a hairpin that she had subsequently reported missing. Hane, however, remained tight-lipped about her connection to Kenji and the hairpin's whereabouts. She was reluctant to cooperate fully with the investigation. The police decided to bring Hane in for questioning. During an extended interrogation, Hane confessed to her involvement in Akari's murder. She revealed that she had been secretly harboring a deep-seated hatred for Akari, fueled by jealousy and resentment toward Akari's seemingly effortless popularity and success. Hanae, it turned out, had also been secretly in love with Kenji, harboring a strong desire to eliminate Akari, her rival for Kenji's affections. According to Hanae's confession, she had collaborated with Kenji to lure Akari to the vacant lot. While Kenji distracted Akari, Hanae dealt the fatal blow. The single strike to Akari's head that had initially puzzled the investigators was now explained. Hanae had always been known for her precise and controlled actions, a trait that served her well in her work as a precision instrument maker. The silver hairpin, however, was not directly used in the murder. It was inadvertently left at the scene amidst the chaos. Hanae, after the murder, had been overcome with guilt and panic. She had assisted Kenji in disposing of the body, and she had then attempted to conceal the hairpin by burying it near the burial site. However, her actions proved insufficient to cover her involvement in the crime. The hairpin became the key piece of evidence, allowing the investigators to finally unravel the truth behind the murder of Sato Akari. The court found Hanae guilty of murder and sentenced her to life imprisonment. The case concluded, bringing a measure of closure to Akari's family and the community. Yet the story itself remains a somber reminder of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of even the most peaceful societies. A reminder that the human heart is capable of great cruelty and deceit. The cicadas continued their rhythmic, chirping their song, a haunting testament to a life cut short, and a truth finally revealed, a tragic melody echoing through the serene Japanese countryside. The quiet town, however, remained forever changed by the chilling reality of Akari's murder, a scar etched deep into its collective consciousness. The chilling tale of Sato Akari's murder, however, served as a stark reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and resentment. The seemingly tranquil town, forever marked by the tragedy, slowly began to heal its collective wounds, slowly mending with the passage of time. Yet the memory of Akari's vibrant spirit and the brutality of her death lingered, a somber undercurrent beneath the surface of daily life. The year is 2024. A bustling metropolis, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of countless lives, dreams, and aspirations. Here, amidst the towering skyscrapers and ceaseless urban energy, lies a story of betrayal, greed, and a shocking crime that would send shockwaves through the city's seemingly impenetrable facade of order and stability. The story of the Kim family, a seemingly successful and respected clan, would unravel, revealing a dark underbelly of ambition, deceit, and murder. The Kim family was known for its prominent position in the city's business elite. Mr. Kim, the patriarch, had built a vast real estate empire, his name synonymous with success and prosperity. Mrs. Kim, equally accomplished, managed their extensive philanthropic endeavors, projecting an image of generosity and social responsibility. Their two children, 27-year-old Sujin and 24-year-old Donghyun, were considered promising young professionals, their future seemingly bright with the family's vast resources. The Kim family was the embodiment of the city's ambitious dream, a symbol of upward mobility and financial success. But beneath this veneer of perfection lay a web of simmering tensions and unspoken resentments. Mr. Kim, though outwardly successful, was a controlling and demanding man. He had instilled in his children a fierce sense of competition, driving them to strive for perfection, often at the expense of their own well-being. This relentless pursuit of success had created a chasm between the family members, fostering a climate of suspicion and rivalry. Mrs. Kim, despite her public image of warmth and generosity, was secretly unhappy in her marriage, trapped in a gilded cage of her husband's ambitions. The tension within the Kim family reached a breaking point following an unexpected announcement from Mr. Kim. He was planning to step down from his leadership role, handing over the reins of the family's vast real estate empire to one of his children. The announcement sparked an intense power struggle between Soo-jin and Dong-hyun, each driven by their own ambition and desire to inherit the family legacy. Soo-jin, the elder sibling, felt entitled to the position, viewing it as her birthright. She had worked tirelessly in the family business, contributing significantly to its expansion and success. Dong-hyun, however, harbored a deep-seated resentment towards his sister. He felt that Soo-jin had been favored by their father, receiving preferential treatment throughout their lives. He believed he was equally deserving of the inheritance and felt unjustly sidelined by his older sister. The siblings' rivalry escalated, fueling a series of heated arguments and bitter confrontations. Their parents, caught in the middle of this familial conflict, were unable to resolve the situation, leaving the tension to fester and intensify. The escalating conflict came to a head during a lavish family dinner. Amidst the opulent surroundings, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken animosity. A heated argument erupted between Soo-jin and Dong-hyun, culminating in a shocking revelation. Dong-hyun accused Soo-jin of embezzling significant funds from the family business, a claim that Soo-jin vehemently denied. The accusation shattered the fragile facade of family harmony, revealing the deep-seated fissures within the Kim family. The accusations, however, did not end there. Soo-jin, in turn, accused Dong-hyun of secretly orchestrating a series of financial transactions that threatened the stability of the family's business holdings. She claimed that he had secretly leveraged the family's assets to fund his own risky investments, jeopardizing their financial future. Both siblings presented compelling evidence supporting their respective accusations. The accusations, however, were not only financial. Darker secrets began to surface as the family members turned on each other. Each sibling leveled personal accusations at the other, exposing long-simmering resentments and deeply buried betrayals. Amidst the chaos, a shocking discovery was made. Mr. Kim was found dead in his study. The death initially appeared to be a natural cause, a heart attack. However, further investigations would reveal a far darker truth about Mr. Kim's demise. The seemingly perfect Kim family would soon unravel, revealing a chilling story of greed, betrayal, and murder. The police investigation into Mr. Kim's death initially focused on natural causes. His medical history indicated a predisposition to heart disease, and the initial examination of the body revealed no signs of foul play. The death was ruled as a heart attack, a tragic but seemingly natural end to a long and successful life. The Kim family, however, was far from united in their grief. The simmering tensions between Soo-jin and Dong-hyun intensified, fueled by their ongoing feud over the family inheritance and the lingering suspicions surrounding their father's death. The police, however, remained unconvinced by the initial assessment of Mr. Kim's death. Several inconsistencies emerged as the investigators delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding his demise. While the family maintained that Mr. Kim had simply collapsed in his study, the investigators found evidence suggesting that he had been incapacitated prior to his death. A faint trace of a sedative was discovered in his system, a drug not listed in his prescribed medication. The police investigation expanded, broadening its scope to encompass the potential for foul play. The investigators began a meticulous review of Mr. Kim's financial records, scrutinizing his business dealings, investments, and personal accounts. They interviewed his business associates, seeking to unearth any evidence of conflicts or disputes that could have motivated his murder. Their efforts eventually uncovered a series of clandestine transactions, hidden offshore accounts, and complex financial schemes that suggested Mr. Kim had been involved in shady dealings. The investigators learned that Mr. Kim had been secretly amassing a vast fortune outside of his legitimate business holdings. He had been systematically funneling funds into numerous offshore accounts and using shell corporations to conceal his assets. This clandestine wealth amounted to several times the value of his officially reported assets. The discovery of this hidden fortune cast suspicion on both Soo-jin and Dong-hyun, each of whom had access to their father's financial records and could have potentially been aware of his secret wealth. The investigation revealed a long-standing feud between Mr. and Mrs. Kim. Mrs. Kim had discovered her husband's clandestine activities and had become increasingly disillusioned and resentful toward him. She had been secretly funneling funds away from his hidden accounts, attempting to gain control of her own share of the family's vast wealth. The investigators discovered evidence suggesting that Mrs. Kim had been planning to divorce Mr. Kim and potentially expose his illicit dealings to the authorities. As the investigation intensified, a pattern of deception and betrayal emerged within the Kim family. Each family member was implicated in a series of lies, hidden transactions, and clandestine activities designed to protect their own interests and gain an advantage over one another. The simmering tensions once confined to the family's internal dynamics spilled out into the public sphere as the media seized upon the sensational story of the seemingly perfect family unraveling. The police focused their attention on Soo-jin and Dong-hyun, the primary beneficiaries of Mr. Kim's estate. They were subjected to intense interrogations, their alibis carefully scrutinized. The siblings continued to deny any involvement in their father's death, maintaining their previous testimonies. However, new evidence contradicted their statements. Traces of the sedative found in Mr. Kim's system were also discovered on both Soo-jin and Dong-hyun's clothing. The investigators discovered a series of text messages exchanged between Soo-jin and Dong-hyun before their father's death. The messages revealed a secret pact between the siblings, a plan to eliminate their father and divide his hidden fortune between them. The siblings had secretly collaborated, administering the sedative to their father, leading to his death. They had then staged the scene to appear as a natural death, attempting to conceal their involvement in the crime. However, their plan ultimately unraveled, their deception revealed by the meticulous efforts of the police investigation. The siblings were arrested and charged with murder. The Kim family's reputation, once built upon success and prosperity, crumbled under the weight of the scandal. The once unassailable image of the Kims, a family synonymous with power and influence, was shattered, leaving behind only a legacy of greed, betrayal, and tragedy. The bustling metropolis, a city of dreams and ambitions, now bore witness to the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and the destructive power of family conflict. The seemingly impenetrable facade of order and stability was cracked, revealing the darkness lurking beneath the city's vibrant surface. The story of the Kim family served as a chilling reminder of the price of ambition and the fragility of seemingly perfect lives. The trial of Soo-jin and Dong-hyun Kim captivated the city. The media frenzy surrounding the case was intense, every detail of the siblings' lives and the circumstances of their father's death scrutinized under a harsh public spotlight. The courtroom was packed each day, the gallery filled with onlookers eager to witness the unraveling of this once celebrated family. The prosecution presented a compelling case, meticulously outlining the siblings' plan to murder their father and divide his hidden fortune. The evidence presented was overwhelming, the traces of the sedative found on both siblings' clothing, the incriminating text messages exchanged between them, and the intricate web of financial transactions that exposed their attempt to conceal their father's secret wealth. Soo-jin and Dong-hyun, however, maintained their innocence throughout the trial. They argued that the evidence presented was circumstantial and that the prosecution had failed to prove their direct involvement in their father's death. They claimed that their actions were motivated by a desire to protect the family's financial interests and that their father's death was a tragic coincidence. Their defense, however, was unconvincing. The jury, swayed by the weight of the evidence, found Sujin and Donghyun guilty of murder and conspiracy to defraud. The siblings were sentenced to life imprisonment, their carefully constructed lives crumbling under the weight of their actions. The once unassailable Kim family empire disintegrated, its assets seized and liquidated to compensate the family's creditors and victims of their father's financial schemes. The story of the Kim family served as a stark cautionary tale. Their downfall, however, was not without a lingering mystery. While the evidence strongly implicated both Sujin and Donghyun in their father's murder, several questions remained unanswered. The police investigation had uncovered evidence of Mrs. Kim's secret financial activities, her clandestine efforts to siphon funds away from her husband's hidden accounts. While Mrs. Kim had died several months prior to Mr. Kim's death, supposedly from a sudden illness, the possibility of foul play remained. The police reopened the investigation into Mrs. Kim's death, focusing on the inconsistencies in the initial investigation. While her death certificate listed the cause as a heart attack, the forensic evidence was inconclusive. There were traces of a drug in Mrs. Kim's system, the same sedative found in Mr. Kim's body, and yet the amounts found in Mrs. Kim's system were substantially smaller than those found in Mr. Kim's body. This discrepancy caused doubt, raising the possibility of foul play. The investigators revisited Mrs. Kim's life, scrutinizing her relationships and activities during the months leading up to her death. They interviewed her closest friends and family members, seeking to uncover any evidence of disputes, conflicts, or potential threats against her. During the course of their investigation, they uncovered a series of cryptic letters written by Mrs. Kim, expressing growing fears for her own safety. She had described feeling increasingly isolated and threatened, her writing growing more frantic and agitated as her death approached. The letters, however, were lacking specific details. Mrs. Kim had evidently been fearful of her husband's wrath but did not directly implicate him. Her cryptic messages, filled with vague allusions and coded language, offered little concrete evidence to support any theory of foul play. The investigation revealed a history of domestic conflict within the Kim family, but a clear motive for Mrs. Kim's murder remained elusive. The case, initially deemed a sudden death, transformed into another investigation, adding yet another layer of complexity to the already intricate Kim family saga. The discovery of Mrs. Kim's letters raised several new questions. Were her fears justified? Had she anticipated her own death? And most importantly, was there a connection between her death and her husband's subsequent demise? The police investigation continued, focusing on the mysterious circumstances of her death. The search for answers was still underway. The city, still reeling from the impact of the Kim family scandal, now faced a new mystery, a chilling reminder that the truth often lies buried beneath layers of deception and carefully constructed facades. The seemingly impenetrable facade of order and stability had been irrevocably shattered, revealing the darkness that continued to haunt the heart of the metropolis. The story of the Kim family remained a complex and chilling tale of ambition, greed, betrayal, and ultimately murder. The investigation into Mrs. Kim's death intensified, focusing on the possibility of foul play. The police revisited the scene of her death, meticulously re-examining her apartment for any overlooked clues. They discovered faint traces of a unique type of perfume, a scent not typically found in Mrs. Kim's belongings. Further investigation revealed that the perfume was a rare and expensive brand favored by a select group of individuals within the city's elite social circles. The police compiled a list of individuals known to use the same perfume, cross-referencing it with Mrs. Kim's social contacts and business associates. Their efforts eventually led them to a prominent businesswoman known for her sharp business acumen and ruthless ambition, Park Suk-ja. Park Suk-ja, it turned out, had a long-standing rivalry with Mrs. Kim, a competition fueled by their shared ambition and overlapping business interests. The two women had been locked in a fierce battle for control of various lucrative real estate deals, their rivalry escalating over the years. The police interviewed Park Suk-ja, discovering that she had a strong motive for wanting to eliminate Mrs. Kim. Park had been secretly manipulating several key financial transactions, leveraging inside information to undermine Mrs. Kim's business dealings. Mrs. Kim, however, had begun to suspect Park's involvement in these schemes and had threatened to expose her actions. This threat had ignited Park's desire to silence Mrs. Kim permanently. The police discovered a series of clandestine meetings between Park Suk-ja and one of the Kim family's disgruntled employees. This employee, disgruntled and resentful over a recent dismissal, had been secretly assisting Park in her efforts to undermine Mrs. Kim's financial dealings. The employee, in exchange for financial compensation, provided Park with confidential information about Mrs. Kim's business activities and personal habits. The police investigation uncovered evidence that suggested Park Suk-ja had hired the disgruntled employee to administer the sedative that was found in Mrs. Kim's system. The employee, it turned out, had surreptitiously slipped the sedative into Mrs. Kim's drink during one of their private meetings. The sedative wasn't intended to be lethal, but it had inadvertently caused Mrs. Kim's death. While the death certificate listed the cause as a heart attack, the combination of the sedative and Mrs. Kim's underlying heart condition had proved fatal. Park Suk-ja was arrested and charged with Mrs. Kim's murder. Her trial was highly publicized, highlighting the ruthless ambition and cutthroat competition that existed within the city's elite business circles. Park maintained her innocence throughout the proceedings, claiming that she had no knowledge of Mrs. Kim's death and had never intended to harm her. Her defense, however, was weak and unconvincing, unable to withstand the weight of the evidence presented by the prosecution. The court found Park Suk-ja guilty of murder and sentenced her to life imprisonment. The case concluded, bringing a measure of closure to the investigation into Mrs. Kim's death. The once vibrant metropolis, however, bore the scars of the Kim family saga. The seemingly impenetrable facade of success and prosperity had been shattered, revealing the dark underbelly of ambition, greed, and betrayal. The city's elite circles remained shaken, their collective sense of security eroded by the chilling reality of the Kim family's downfall. The case, however, didn't entirely resolve the mysteries surrounding the Kim family. The police investigation had uncovered numerous other illicit activities, hidden financial dealings, and potential crimes committed by members of the Kim family and their associates. While the cases of Mr. and Mrs. Kim's deaths were resolved, many other threads remained open. The investigation continued its scope, expanding far beyond the immediate focus on the murders to encompass a wide range of potentially criminal activities. The once successful Kim family had left behind a legacy of financial chaos, raising various questions about business practices and financial regulations within the city. The city, once captivated by the Kim family's seemingly flawless success, would now grapple with the aftermath of their downfall, facing serious questions about the ethical and legal implications of their empire's collapse. The story of the Kims was far from over, its lingering questions and unresolved issues continuing to cast a long shadow. Their story served as a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of the price of unchecked ambition and the corrosive effects of greed. The unraveling of the Kim family's empire extended far beyond the criminal charges against Sujin Dong-hyun and Park Suk-ja. The extensive police investigation uncovered a complex web of financial irregularities, hidden transactions, and potentially illegal activities that implicated numerous individuals and organizations within the city's business and political circles. The once impenetrable facade of the Kim family's success crumbled, revealing a network of corruption and deceit that reached far beyond the immediate family. The authorities launched a wide-ranging inquiry into the Kim family's financial dealings, scrutinizing their business practices, investments, and partnerships. They discovered a pattern of tax evasion, money laundering, and insider trading that involved several key figures within the city's business elite. These individuals, initially considered successful and respected members of the community, were implicated in a series of fraudulent schemes designed to enrich themselves at the expense of their investors, creditors, and partners. The investigation uncovered a network of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and complex financial instruments used to conceal the Kim family's illicit activities. These schemes had been operating for years, gradually enriching the Kims and their associates while defrauding countless investors and creditors. The scale of the fraud was immense, totaling billions of won. The impact extended far beyond the Kim family itself, creating a ripple effect that threatened the stability of the city's financial system. The authorities initiated a series of investigations into various organizations and individuals connected to the Kim family. These investigations revealed a widespread pattern of corruption that extended into the city's political structures. Several prominent officials and government employees were found to have been involved in facilitating the Kim family's illegal activities. These officials had abused their positions of power to provide preferential treatment, granting permits, approvals, and licenses that aided the Kim family's expansion and the concealment of their fraudulent operations. The resulting scandal shook the city's foundations. The public's trust in the city's political and business institutions eroded. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensified as each new revelation deepened the sense of outrage and betrayal. The seemingly unshakable prosperity of the city was now revealed to be built on a foundation of deceit and corruption. The impact of the Kim family scandal extended beyond the realm of criminal prosecution, affecting the city's social and political landscapes in profound ways. The investigations continued for years, resulting in numerous criminal charges, trials, and convictions. The city's elite faced widespread scrutiny, and numerous individuals and organizations were implicated in a network of financial crimes that shocked the public. The once vibrant business community was now struggling to recover from the fallout, struggling to restore trust and stability in the wake of the Kim family scandal. The Kim family's downfall created a crisis of confidence and fueled significant reforms within the city's government and financial institutions. Measures were implemented to increase transparency and accountability, aiming to prevent similar instances of widespread fraud and corruption. New regulations were enacted to strengthen financial oversight, enhancing transparency and deterring illicit activities. The Kim family's legacy became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked ambition and the devastating impact of greed and corruption. The city's relentless pursuit of prosperity had been marred by the Kim family scandal, highlighting the importance of ethical conduct and transparency in maintaining a just and stable society. The city, though wounded, began a long and arduous process of healing, striving to build a more ethical and responsible future in the shadow of the Kim family's fall. The once vibrant metropolis, a city of dreams and aspirations, had been irrevocably altered. The echoes of the Kim family's story remained, serving as both a warning and a driving force behind reforms that sought to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The story of the Kim family served as a chilling reminder. Even in a city built on dreams and ambition, the pursuit of wealth and power can lead to disastrous and tragic consequences. The city marked by the Kim family's downfall would struggle to fully recover forever, bearing the scars of its own collective failings. The final chapter of the Kim family saga wasn't a neat conclusion, but a lingering echo, a testament to the enduring consequences of unchecked ambition and the complex web of human relationships. While the criminal trials concluded with life sentences for Soo-jin and Dong-hyun and a lengthy prison term for Park Suk-ja, the ripple effects of their actions continued to reverberate through the city's social and economic fabric. The once impregnable Kim family empire lay in ruins, its assets liquidated to compensate victims of their financial schemes. Numerous other individuals and organizations connected to the Kim family faced investigations and legal repercussions. The city's business and political landscapes underwent significant restructuring, aimed at improving transparency and accountability. New regulations were implemented to strengthen financial oversight and prevent similar instances of widespread fraud and corruption. The Kim family's downfall had created a crisis of confidence, prompting a thorough reassessment of ethical standards in corporate governance within the city. The media continued to follow the story, reporting on the ongoing investigations and the legal battles that ensued. The Kim family's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked greed and the importance of ethical conduct in business and public life. Public opinion remained sharply divided, with some expressing sympathy for the Kim siblings, viewing their actions as a product of their father's controlling nature and the intense pressure to succeed. Others condemned their actions unequivocally, emphasizing the devastating impact of their crimes on the many victims affected by their financial schemes. The city, however, moved on slowly, recovering from the aftermath of the scandal. The wounds inflicted by the Kim family's actions ran deep, leaving a permanent scar on the city's collective consciousness. The once unassailable reputation of the Kim family was forever tarnished, their legacy forever linked to the greed, betrayal, and tragedy that marked their downfall. Yet amidst the wreckage of their empire, a renewed sense of vigilance and ethical awareness emerged. The city, though scarred, resolved to build a more just and transparent society where accountability and ethical conduct were paramount. The long legal battles continued, with appeals and counter-appeals, stretching the process for years. While the initial convictions stood, the intricacies of the case ensured ongoing legal challenges, ensuring that the Kim family story would continue to resonate within the city for generations to come. The city's financial landscape was forever changed, with increased regulations and enhanced oversight aimed at preventing similar instances of widespread fraud. The story became an integral part of the city's history, a cautionary tale taught in business schools and discussed in civic forums. The siblings themselves, now serving life sentences, remained isolated figures, their story serving as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition. The public's fascination with their case, however, never waned. The story continued to generate considerable media attention, its details analyzed and debated for years to come. The Kim family's story ultimately transcended the realm of a simple crime drama. It served as a complex and cautionary tale, a reminder of the frailties of the human spirit and the enduring consequences of unchecked greed. The city, though scarred, emerged from the Kim family saga with a renewed focus on ethical conduct and social responsibility. While the lingering echoes of their crimes would forever remain, the city's commitment to justice, fairness, and transparency served as a testament to its resilience, its ability to heal and move forward, learning from the mistakes of its past. The story of the Kim family was therefore a final chapter, not only in their own lives, but in the collective memory of the city they had once dominated. Their legacy would endure, a somber reminder that ambition unchecked by morality can lead to tragic and far-reaching consequences.